or even there is another argument. Yeah, for example, after takes, bishop takes d5, rook a1. What happens if black, for example, just falls back with the bishop to d6? Kind of, wow. Okay, let's show. You want to run this test with the chat? White has some very nasty ideas here.
You know what, Peter? Even I'm trying to figure out what your nasty ideas are, but let's ask chat.
Chat knows.
Chat knows already.
I guess, yeah. I mean, okay, chat is always super sharp.
Peter,
yeah.
I think I know what you want. This is a stunning question. Chat, white to play here. What if this comes on the board? By the way, black Hans has gone for the move bishop f5, but let's say this position, get your thinking caps on, white to move. Let me pull up chat and see who gets this right. This is a tough one. And
yeah, but a beautiful one, yeah?
Stunning, absolutely stunning. But does it work, Peter? Yeah, it does work.
It should work. I mean, it should, yeah.
Ooh, Tad is saying they're more than ready. Well, Tad has got his eyes as well on our Chess24 chat, so let us know who answers. Wow, there are a few people who got the first move right, I see, but the follow-up is... The first person to get it right on my chart is Noah. Well, the move order might not be... Actually, Noah's got an interesting move order as well. So, Peter, Noah says Queen F6.
Yeah, that's, you know, I was also debating. It looks like both moves are good. Yeah, it's the key idea. Yeah, Queen F6 perfectly spotted because...
Super.
Yeah, I mean, okay, we are threatening bishop h6 check, so king g8, queen g7 checkmate. It's clear that black has to take the queen, and then we go bishop h6 check, so it's also possible for bishop h6 check move or the king g8, rook e8 check. And the trick is that, yeah, black actually has the move bishop f8, but it does not change anything. We simply take on a8, and next move is rook takes f8 checkmate, or rook e8, and then, for example, if black protects with queen d6, and look at those pieces. That's what we were talking about. This box king and rook can end up in such a checkmate.
That is indeed super pretty. Well done, Chad. The idea of bishop h6, queen f6. I have to admit that I actually thought bishop h6 was the way it came to my mind. But then in chat, when I saw queen f6, even that makes perfect sense to start with the move queen f6. Very nicely spotted idea, chat. Super stuff. Peter, this would have been quite the puzzle. But instead, we've got bishop f5, Hans deciding. Of course, he sees everything. And he decides to put pressure on the white rook. Now, instead of falling back, Magnus counterattacks the queen first with the move c4.
Yeah, it's now a very strategic battle. I think we will come back because I'm getting the message that Levon is apparently doing very well. I mean, look at this. The buried bishop from g6 got into e4, and now it's white's king who is feeling much more insecure. I mean, what a turn of events. I want to see what happened here. Okay, first of all, how did this bishop get to g6? That's the first question. Yeah, it's a slow Italian. Okay, and yeah, Levon actually likes to provoke. Yeah, it's online chess. I mean, let's have some fun. So he doesn't, I don't think that in a classical game he would ever let this happen, but here he feels like, okay, I'm gonna have my knight d8 kind of counterplay, so I don't mind this. And he just outplays Duda. Duda went for some aggressive f4. I'm not sure that the position demanded this action. And Levon strikes in the center with c6 d5, very nicely timed counterattack. And all of a sudden, wow, if you ask me who wins this match at this moment, I would have picked Levon, that's for sure. But yeah, let's see. It's still all to play for. Knight e6, knight h4, bishop e4, and Tadeas was, I think, mentioning that according to computer, bishop b8 would have been almost winning for black. Levon played the move bishop c7, but apparently bishop b8 followed by queen c7, threatening some checkmating ideas would have been almost deadly.
But that looks super strong, no? You just put up the battery on the b8, h2 diagonal, but perhaps, and kind of hard to imagine what it was about this that Lev didn't like. Instead, he went for the option with bishop c7. So it'll still take some time to set up that battery, and c4, striking immediately in the center to destabilize that bishop on e4. And after the trades, he jumps in with bishop h2, a discovered check, and trading this bishop for the light squared bishop. And after all these trades, Peter, it looks as if white still has a weak king. This isolated queen's pawn on d4, which can come under fire. I have to say, yes, bishop b8, queen c7 looked really strong, but I'm still loving Lev's position.
Yeah, it's a huge advantage. And take a look. I mean, Levon is up on the clock. He has more time on the clock now than he started the game. I mean, how is he do all this? On the other hand, I mentioned, you remember I told yesterday that since Levon came to us and he was in such a good mood. I mean, if he keeps on coming and he keeps on, you know, having this mood, then I don't see who will stop him. Yeah, I mean, he just fooled me with his bishop on g6. I shouldn't have looked at his position. I should have just believed it's Levon, so he knows what he's doing. And Duda is in trouble already.
Duda in big trouble, and very soon, and that too with the white pieces. We don't see that happen too often. Let's take a little bit more of a closer look onto this position, because it feels as if Black's attack could be quite deadly soon. Knight g3, really trying to get rid of that bishop on e4. How does Black react? Does Black be okay? Is Black going to be okay with the exchange? He says, no way, I'm not going to get rid of that very, very strong and very powerful light squared bishop.
Yeah, actually, the trick is that if, for example, in general, I think Black would not mind trading the bishop for the knight if he would be sure that this knight from e6 would jump to d5 and blocks this pawn. Yeah, and then we can claim that a good knight versus bad bishop and open king and all the weaknesses should be very nice. But I believe the reason why Levon moved the bishop away, that he wants to keep the control of the d5 square, and there was a danger that white takes on e4, and after queen e4, white will be able to use the momentum for some d4 d5 with counterplay. So for this reason, I'm loving Levon's reaction. Just move the bishop back. It also protects, by the way, the weakness on f7, which was hanging in some lines if white was able to trade on c8 eventually. So it all makes sense. He's just better. Also, you have the time advantage. Keep as much tension in the position as possible. I think this is very, very instructive.
Very instructive. And also, I was wondering about bishop g6, moves like knight f5, but always white has to watch out for rook takes c1, queen takes c1, and the a5 pawn is hanging. So the rook on f1 could not have continued defending that piece on f5. Maybe if we just back up a move instead of h4, knight f5 looked quite tempting to block that bishop. But amongst other things, Black can always consider grabbing that rook on c1. Now you can't take it with the rook because the f5 knight hangs. And then suddenly a5 pawn is a weakness. So it looks like white has not only overstretched on the king side, but also on the queen side.
Yeah, exactly. There are weaknesses all around the place, and Black has a very solid position. So I actually kind of agree with what Duda is doing, that h4, h5, at least you can claim that you kick the bishop away from the ideal square on g6, yeah? At the same time, it weakens the g5 square forever, and maybe some timely f5 break. I mean, some timely f5 break can actually lead to some very big weakness also on h5. So already white has a terrible weakness on a5, and the h5 pawn also can be isolated.
Wow, and I'm looking at our chat and they're drawing my attention to Levon's clock, Peter. He has lots of time. Duda already in time trouble. Levon's got extra time. Duda, do you want some time? Levon playing like a blitz game. He's got 15.5 minutes on the clock and this position.
Yeah. I mean, he's just enjoying himself. I mean,
he just plays instantly. Absolutely. All right, let's look at the other game that we haven't had a check on yet. Praggnanandhaa up against Anish. This is their first round. Prag playing with the white pieces. Now, Peter, traditional wisdom goes that if two knights are fighting for the same square, then that's not that great. But in this case, I'm kind of loving Black's hold on f4.
Yes, me too. And the point is not even only that the two knights, but it's much more again about this buried bishop. I mean, I'm very skeptical. I think whoever watches our broadcast knows that whenever I see that there is a bishop on h4 and then potentially will be locked out on g3, I'm always very skeptical. But here as well, I feel like, okay, it's a dream scenario for Black. I mean, Black is clearly better. The only question, Anish has a big choice. Yeah, that do you play systematically and you just play f6? Eventually, you might even play the move g5 and then force the bishop to g6. It's also very attractive. But there is also some reasoning behind that. Okay, what about just maybe going queen e6 and then queen g6, putting the pressure on g2 pawn like this? I mean, Black is spoiled with a lot of choices here. That's the only problem.
All right, so early days in this game, but it does appear as if Anish should be happy with the opening outcome with some pleasant choices for Black. Yes, Prag does have a little advantage on the clock, but Anish also with 5.5 minutes. I think there is a lot of pressure on, there's probably more pressure on Anish in this match than there is on Pragg to sort of prove something in the upcoming games. And he feels like he's got the advantage with Black. We'll see what happens. Peter, let's go to the most exciting board, which honestly is the Lev Duda game right now.
Yeah, because actually Duda probably knowing that he is strategically clearly worse and he is also having a very bad clock situation, he goes for some direct attack. He wants to create some counterplay, very understandably. So after h5, bishop e4, he simply went for bishop takes h6. He just wants to get closer to Black's king. But does this really work?
I mean, it's hard to imagine. Let's just take a look at what happens if Black actually accepts this sacrifice. So let's say g takes h6. That's the first thing that we need to
that's
look
the
at.
first thing, and we will start with it. I just want to highlight that even a move like knight takes d4, threatening knight f3 check, is something that that's really also a headache. But first, let's take a look what white wants after gh6. So queen takes h6 check will be played, and we can play bishop back to h7. We can play king g8. King g8, then knight f5 maybe.
Knight f. Let's see that line, Peter. It's a very interesting way how Black and White can build an initiative. Knight f5 threatening knight e7. And the problem is if you grab on f5, the g file opens up, and then suddenly bishop f5, g f5, queen f5. There are all these. This is a nightmare for Black, so he definitely should not go into this direction.
Yes, so instead of king g8, for example, a move like bishop h7 is quite tempting because, okay, the knight and the bishop beautifully protects. The knight protects the rook on f8. Where is the danger? And let's not forget, White's king is also very vulnerable. So maybe White
Maybe
just
knight f5, maybe
knight f5. Yeah. White follows it up with knight f5 and then threatens queen f6, knight h6, checkmate.
And queen f6, knight e7 as well. I think, Peter,
Yes.
this could get a bit tricky. So bishop h6 is definitely not without venom. And I'm just wondering if knight d4, the initial move that you pointed out, suddenly looks way stronger.
Yes, because suddenly we create real threats against White's king. Okay, one can argue that king on h3 will be quite safe. Yeah, actually, thanks to this knight on g3, it's a place to hide. But I mean,
take on h6. I mean, let's say you go king h3. After g takes h6, queen takes h6. Suddenly, knight f5 will not be that big a threat because f5 will go with a check.
yes, that's true. And do I have some rook c5? No, then bishop g2 check. Very important. Bishop g2 check you have.
Actually, bishop g2 check is quite a big threat. So rook c5, the point was that after queen c5, you wanted to take on e4 and make it a bit uncomfortable with a big threat. And no checks for Black either in this position.
Yes.
So instead of that, after rook c5, bishop g2 is quite a key move.
Yeah, and wins the game. Yeah, the intermediate check, and then you take, and the knight can't join the party. So that's it. I mean, I'm really struggling to understand and also to believe that how Duda wants to get away after knight takes d4. But Levon goes actually just takes king g8. He says like, you know what? I had 15 minutes on my clock. I had the time to calculate. Yeah, we see this line with knight f5. You just don't have to take.
So he goes rook e8 because rook e8, there's also rook c8 ideas. Like, let's just point out rook e8, knight. Yeah, you start with rook c8 probably, yeah?
Yeah, rook e8, rook c8. Threatening knight e7. So yes, you can still play maybe the move queen d7, but this is very artificial for Black. I don't think that this is what Levon intends. So after knight f5, something like queen d8. Queen d8 was the original move, but then rook c8 comes.
But then queen h4 check.
No,
queen h4
knight
is not
protects.
possible.
Sorry, the knight protects.
Yeah, rook c8 anyway. He goes rook e8, by the way. So he's played the move, defending on e7. And let's just take a look at that position with rook c8.
Yeah, rook c8 is going to be played. And okay, he's expecting to protect with queen d7.
Or queen b5 might be another way because you threaten queen e2 as well.
Queen b5, yeah. Queen b5. No, queen b5, knight e7 mate.
Oh,
It's mate. It's
Oh
not
my
check.
God.
It's a nice little check, sir. Yeah, please make a move. Yeah.
That is no little check, Peter. Okay, so queen d7 is pretty much forced.
Yeah, queen d7 pretty much forced. Yeah.
But maybe it's forced and good enough.
Yeah, because okay, we are covering the e7 square. It should be enough. I mean,
Queen f6, you can just go bishop f5.
yes, I mean we always have now bishop takes f5 idea. Okay, it's I mean, seeing that Levon has kind of played it so quickly. It shows that he had calculated everything, yeah, because now he's also threatening bishop takes f5, and then later after the knight moves, already rook e2 check is a big threat, checkmating white's king. Well spotted, well calculated.
And just look at our screen, Peter. Lev looks so relaxed and composed. Duda in big trouble here. And just the way it was handled, I mean, Lev was just blitzing out move after move. And then in that one critical moment when Duda went bishop h6, Lev slows down, calculates it till the end. And here we have this position, and it just feels like it was the flow, like everything clicked for Lev.
Yeah, I mean, usually when you have a great strategical position, then the tactics also should work in your favor. Yeah, that's kind of the gold rule. Yeah, it's like the golden rule from classics. Yeah, that put your pieces on the best squares and the tactics will come to you. Yeah, it's not like you shouldn't be running after tactics. The tactics should run to you. And I feel like this game also demonstrates that. Yeah, that strategically Black was doing better and White was doing the sacrifice out of desperation, not because he was so happy.
No, absolutely. It was definitely out of desperation and not a winning attempt. Duda shaking his head there. Queen d8. I thought queen b5 was also an interesting option, an idea we discussed earlier. Getting that queen onto e2. From queen d8, one thing is clear. Now queen h4 is something White has to watch out for. So the knight on f5 cannot move. Also, the queen might enter into the attack with queen to b8. And big update. There has been a turnaround in the Magnus game. Peter, Hans has worked his magic.
Well, I mean, I would not even call a turnaround. It was just like Hans outplayed Magnus. I mean, one really has to tell the truth, because I mean, simply Magnus was enjoying his position. Yeah, he opted for this c4. We have seen that Computer was actually skeptical about this move c4, and it's one thing that Computer is skeptical, but you are playing against the world champion Magnus Carlsen, and Hans just systematically, very nicely grabbed the initiative, and apparently he's doing very well at the moment. I mean, about winning, I'm not sure. It just looks like it's wonderful position, but it's still all to play for. But Black is in total control.
So no material advantage, but just complete domination on the board, as we can just move on and see the live position. Black has advanced that pawn to h4. Really a cramped position for White. Peter, you say it so calmly that Hans has outplayed Magnus, but that is no easy feat, especially with the black pieces. This is some amazing stuff.
Exactly. And yeah, Hans is going systematic. With bishop f8, he wants to get the bishop to e7. It will support the break with g5, g4, because the bishop needs to protect the pawn on h4. And after, for example, a 4 sequence of h take g4, queen take g4, then Black would be able to switch to a very dangerous attack. And Magnus immediately steps back with the knight to e1. He might be even going for a terrible looking f3 move and then try to hope that he will be able to get king h1, bishop g1 in. But if we are talking about such moves, such defensive moves, it already shows that yeah, Magnus is trying to dig himself in, and Hans says he doesn't want to give any of it. He breaks with g4. Takes, and now the question, do you take with the queen or with the bishop? I mean, I'm assuming that taking with the queen is a little bit more natural, but
and
I mean,
more tempting. No, you hit the rook on d1. He decides to go with the bishop.
yeah, I mean, it's really up to the player. I mean, both look really tempting. One thing is important, not to spend too much time, yeah, because the game is still just beginning. I mean, we know Magnus will put up incredible resistance, yeah, so it would be too foolish to spend here too much time deciding between queen g4 and bishop g4.
Also, bishop h6 is always in the air, right? You can hit that rook on e3, and d3 is weak. So the bishop from f8, once it does get to h6, will become quite a powerhouse. And where do you move your rook? Because you can't go rook d2, rook c1 because of these threats.
Yeah, I mean, for example, something like rook d2 and then bishop h6, f4 would be a terrible weakening, yeah.
Very weakening. So he decides to not move the rook, plays the move f3, but this also weakens the position quite a bit, and Black can still play bishop h6.
Yeah, he's trying to stabilize the light squares.
After bishop h6, you might have rook e4, although I don't know how you evaluate rook e4, queen e4.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, rook e4, queen e4, fe4 takes on d1. I mean, also looks very strong for Black, yeah, because Actually, the knight has no moves. Yeah, it's tied to the d3 pawn. Maybe I even have to play king f2 to stop bishop e2, because otherwise bishop e2 wins the game.
Exactly, and the bishop on h2 is also quite a dead piece for the time being.
Yeah, no, I mean, Magnus in a lot of trouble, but yeah, Hans just goes back bishop f5, no reason to calculate anything with 4 minutes on the clock. Yeah, Magnus goes f4.
Magnus going deeper and deeper into the chair and into the sorrows of his position with that move f4, weakening it more. But what else could he do? Because bishop h6 was such a big threat. And now black can also just post his rook on d4, because the knight from e1 can't really jump to f3.
Yeah, bishop a6. Yeah, putting the pressure, and look at the way how Magnus is sitting at the board. I mean, at his screen. I mean, it just shows that he's disgusted with his position. I mean, this is a catastrophic position. He knows it. Yeah, the king is vulnerable. The bishop is terrible. The structure is very bad. I mean, weakness on d3. He's tied with his rook to defense. It's always a problem that you have a weakness, a pawn weakness, which you can't protect with the pawn. Yeah, then your pieces are forever tied to that defense. The rook on e3 is also kind of hanging on in there to defend the d3 pawn, the knight on e1 queen. I mean, all of white's pieces are tied to one defense of this is the stupid weakness on d3, and black has all the time in the world and also the space advantage to regroup and eventually start a big attack on the king side.
It just looks like everything is playing in Hans's favor right now. But again, he needs to watch out that clock, because he has to find that moment to really break through in the position. And Peter, we know that Magnus, regardless of how he looks on the camera, he's not going to make it easy. You have to win with him, against him on every move. You give him one chance to get out and he'll take it. And look at that, good or bad, he's trying to complicate things. He tries to bring the queen onto the attack with queen a5, hitting on that c5 pawn. And with that, big questions to Hans: does he capture on d3, or does he simply fall back with the bishop? And
yeah, well, all counterattacks with queen g4, yeah?
Queen g4, and the point is that after knight f3, there's always h3, which is really annoying.
Yeah, and queen g4 on the board. Yeah, also the pawn on f4 is loose. Yeah, so Magnus had to play rook f3, and look at this, the computer.
Bishop e4? What about
bishop e4? That's it.
Bishop e4 would be just, you lose material here, because let's just have that move on the board. You can't take on e4. The rook on d1 is pinned. You can't move that f3 rook. The d1 rook is hanging. Chat, will Hans play bishop e4?
On the board.
On the board. Well done, Hans.
Wow, I think Hans will be super pleased with this. I mean, after all what happened yesterday and losing the match 3-0, and probably many people, you know, he was also reading the commentary that, okay, they were like, after losing, you are complaining. I mean, there you have it. I mean, Hans is an incredible fighter. Barnes is back against the champion.
This is amazing. Just as I was saying that it's not easy to beat Magnus, he goes queen a5 and Hans immediately goes queen g4. And look at Magnus. He is, like you mentioned, quite disgusted with the way this game has gone. That too with the white pieces. Defeating Magnus Carlsen like this is no joke. And this is just an amazing game from the beginning by Hans Niemann.
Absolutely. I mean, okay, it's... I'm really happy for him. I mean, I know what he has been through yesterday, and okay, this is wonderful, and it will also give us the chance to see how Magnus will try to bounce back after the heavy loss. Yeah, because yesterday's match actually was too smooth after what we have seen in the first two games. Yeah, so it's a big test for Magnus as well.
Also, just a big update, Peter. The Alireza Liam game has ended in a draw. There wasn't much of action that happened there, as we predicted that Liam seemed very comfortable out of the opening, traded the right pieces, the pawn structure, and that one has ended in a draw. Meanwhile, the Prague-Anish game is still on. Should we get a quick update on that?
Yeah, let's have an update. Of course, it's also very difficult to move away from Hans beating Magnus, because, okay, this is incredible news for American chess. I mean, the US chess. I mean, sure. The youngster, the young prodigy. I mean, if you look at Hans, you don't feel like how young he is. Yeah, but he's incredibly young.
We can quickly jump back to it. Just what is the evaluation here and who is better on the Prague board? All right, let's stay with this one.
Yeah, let's stay. We also got the news that Levon actually confidently converted that piece of possession. So he wins, and all eyes on Hans. Yeah, and also, yeah, he goes for straightforward play. He's about to force Magnus to resign. I mean, rook d1.
Let's have the players on our screen as well. Hans and Magnus. This is quite a big moment, as you pointed out. Hans Niemann, whose rating has been skyrocketing over the last year, has been playing some phenomenal chess, and this, as you mentioned, would be a big win for the American junior.
Yeah, very important win. And the problem for Magnus is that, I mean, okay, all his pieces are terrible. Usually you can be exchanged down, but you have some compensation, you have some play. I mean, here you don't have anything. You just try to, rook e3.
And if you support it, this is amazing. You go queen d2, you go rook e1, queen e1, queen g2 mate.
Of course, yeah, you're gonna do it, and I wonder how Magnus is trying to keep the game going at all.
I don't think you can. He goes king f2, and even you can just go bishop f4 here.
It feels like you can do whatever you want. I mean, it's just
maybe
incredible.
Just h takes g. There are so many options. There's h takes g2. There's bishop f4. Hans just needs to stay calm, and he goes for the. I think bishop f4 was just so direct, and that is Magnus Carlsen resigns.
Wow, incredible power performance by Hans. Well done.
This was such a power-packed game, and there we have Magnus heading back. As we mentioned, Peter, yesterday as well, there is a resting area for players between the games. It's on the same floor as the arena, and we see the players rushing there only a couple of minutes, 10 minutes before the start of the next game. So very little time to actually recover. But what a start for Hans Niemann.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And it will be also very difficult for Magnus to readjust his strategy, because now he will try to create risk with the black pieces. It's going to be very tough. I mean, whenever you lose first game, and especially with the white pieces, it just kills your whole match strategy, because it wasn't part of the plan for sure.
Not at all. A lot of appreciation coming in for Hans in our chat as well. Keep that going, chat, because Hans deserves every bit of it. It's not just the result, but simply how dominating he was from start to finish in that game. We've got this game still on. Anish proclaiming that he will be babysitting Pragg. As far as I can see right now, Peter, black seems to be doing fine. I do not like white's pawn structure at all with these two double pawns, but then white will win that extra a6 pawn. But I don't think it's going to be able to come to anything simply because of the ridiculous pawn structure that white has. Yeah,
I mean, of course, white will be simply happy to survive this game. And it feels like he should be able. I mean, it's ugly pawns, but extra. I mean, one of them is an extra pawn, So there is also an argument that do you try to play bishop d5, but then eventually maybe black will be able to get something, some counterplay on the second rank. So yeah, Pragg just grabs on a6, and I believe he will set up some fortress. For example, if we just start to chase this rook, because if we trade one pair of rooks, then the game is automatically over. So for example, after rook ac1, you kind of have to play rook cb3, but then bishop c8 will be already probably also strong. Rook c1 on the board.
It's the kind of position where white has the extra pawn, but is very happy to simplify and bail out.
Of course, I mean, if you have extra pawn like this, you are enjoying the extra pawn because it will give you some safety, and then Anish takes on c1. I'm not really expecting, I mean, white will put king on f2, bishop somehow will get back to f3. Anish will play, of course Anish will play. There is just no reason why you shouldn't be playing this for black a little bit. But of course, the outcome is quite obvious that it's going to be a draw.
And I think it makes all the difference that all the pawns are on one wing. Let's say that there were an additional pawn on the queen side as well, then suddenly black could definitely try for more because of white's pawn structure.
Exactly. I mean, the bishop on e6 is such a wonderful piece, because it's very nicely protected by the pawn on f7, and it eyes also the queen side. The only problem is that there is nothing on the queen side anymore. So white will just be able, goes for bishop c8, disbalancing this bishop. Okay, if Anish trades the bishop, that's basically agreeing to a draw. The big question is, can he hide this bishop at all somewhere?
It looks tough because after bishop d5, there's always this rook c5 stuff, which is annoying.
Exactly, So Anish goes g6. So now we're going to see bishop e6, rook e6, and then king f2. Okay, I think that Anish, because he plays against a very young Pragg, he might try a couple of moves, but
it doesn't feel like a real try, this position.
No, not at all,
It really
It's
does.
going to be repetition. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just about finding that way to repeat, and there we have it. And this one ends in a draw. Both players can be happy with the start. It was a well-fought game. Anish with the black pieces definitely had no problem throughout. But Peter, the standout performance for today's round one has to be Hans's game.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also very instructive, yeah, because we talked about this position. It looked like, okay, white is the one who could eventually claim some advantage. And after bishop f5, the pawn move, yeah, and everybody always tells that be careful with pawn moves because you can't move the pawn back, yeah, and from a stable structure with the pawn on c2 protecting the d3 pawn, suddenly after c4, white had an eternal weakness on d3. The reason why Magnus took this into account because he felt like his other piece activity will compensate for it, and that was the reason why we were kind of in shock when in like 5-6 moves later we have seen that his pieces, I mean, this was very crucial that black was able to grab this tempo with h6, bishop f4, g5, forcing white to lose the grip of the position. The bishop on g6 is already a headache. Then rook d8, h3, king g8, followed by this queen g6 maneuver was also very instructive because here, yeah, when we saw queen g6, eyeing the d3 pawn plus opening up the way for this h5, h4 plus e6, cementing the structure, and then black is coming from bishop f8, bishop e7, g4, or if he gets the chance to push g4 immediately as in the game, then he does it. The bishop then retreats to h6, and white is in a very ugly spot. Incredibly well played by Hans.
Super game. And I thought even the way Lev won his first game against Jan-Krzysztof Duda, both these wins were just all about asserting dominance from start to finish. Whether it was the opening phase, the middle game, just very impressive stuff. And let's quickly bring on our update of the scores. We've had 2 draws and 2 decisive games. 3 games still remain in each of the matches. Alireza Liam was a very peaceful, I think the only peaceful game of the day. We didn't have much of a chance to look at it because really nothing super exciting happened in that one. Liam had it under control from the very beginning with the black pieces. Anish Pragg as well, a bit of a fight there. It looked like Anish got a good position out of the opening. There was knight on f4 forming a bind on the king side as well as Pragg's bishop, but then Pragg was resourceful and managed to draw the first game. The 2 big games, Magnus and Jan-Krzysztof Duda on the receiving end of this one, with Hans and Levon taking the lead in their match.
Yeah, wow. I mean, actually, if we have a little time, we can come back to this Alireza versus Liam game just for a second, because I think that maybe the move that Liam has played is some kind of a big novelty. I mean, after bishop d3, white is putting the pressure on b5. Yeah, this is the big thematic theme of this variation. And then Liam answered it by ignoring this, giving up the structure. Normally, this is a catastrophical decision, yeah, to give up the center like this. I mean, give up the queen side like this, and you will have a vulnerable pawn on a6, but it's justified by this timely break with d6, d5. And after that, we have seen some forced tradings in the center, d takes e5, knight e4, everything gets traded off, and it's kind of force. Look, a4 takes e4 and knight takes d5. This is the key motive that suddenly the tactics work in black's favor, because if you take queen takes d8, then black has the intermediate knight takes f3, g takes f3, and then rook e takes d8, and the position is fine. Or if you play like happened in the game after knight e5, you take first on e5, then Liam is able to take on d1 and take with the rook on e5, eliminating all the problems. Yes, there is a structure deficit, but black has a terrible, I mean, white has a terrible bishop against a very good bishop, so it more than compensates, and it was clear that the result will actually end up in a draw here. So great preparation by Liam.
Very nicely handled. Chad is asking about the mark on Pragg's forehead, and it's quite common in India. It's sort of like a holy mark of blessing. And I think before the game, it's Pragg's coach Ramesh who's here, and they put it on the forehead as a prayer, as a blessing, and just to bring good luck to the player. Seems to be working. Yes,
seems to be working. I mean, extremely well. Yeah. I mean, okay, I have to say that, yeah, Anish was super impressive in the opening as usual. Yeah, I mean, he got the upper hand with the black pieces. I mean, he very easily equalized and was maybe the one who was putting pressure. It's also like very funny that this is a position which is a typical anti-Berlin with the white bishop on b5 and the pawn on a7. But here the pawn moves a6 and this bishop retreat, bishop a4 probably works more in black's favor. And we have seen that very quickly. Anish actually just got a very nice position. Bishop g5, knight d8, also very thematic. Knight d8, knight e6. And that's how the knight very quickly reached f4. Super play by Anish. I'm just feeling like, you know, whatever I see in the openings from Anish, I'm such a big fan, but finally the final outcome of the game is not exactly what that he deserves with all his great play. I mean, here also he gets the initiative with black. I mean, yeah, white is already, you see the last three moves had been bishop g5, bishop h4, bishop g3, while black was actually making so much more progress with this knight regrouping. Bishop d6 protecting the pawn indirectly because the pawn on e5 cannot be taken. For example, okay, bishop e5 takes, black can probably decide between knight c5 or knight f4 to win a piece. So this pawn is taboo. White played knight
b2. e5, then there's knight c5 in this
yes,
position.
exactly. If white takes the pawn on with the knight, then knight c5, attacking the bishop, and the bishop attacks the knight. So Pragg had to kind of play the move knight bd2 and then suddenly knight h5 and this position looked quite unpleasant. But then for some reason Anish decided to retreat with the knight to f6. Maybe it's still kind of correct. I just felt like it's not that ambitious. Yeah, it was a little bit losing the momentum. Knight g6, bishop g3, c5. Okay, anyway, nice. I mean, clear advantage. So I understand why he was kind of very happy with this c5 break. But somehow Pragg, yeah, these young guys, yeah, they are always finding some counterplay. They are calculating. They are not getting, you know, this feeling that, oh my God, I got outplayed. And I think this is a clear thing from the older generation, yeah, that we hate to be outplayed because we feel like then we lost the battle or something. I don't think that the young generation really cares because they know that, okay, I got outplayed the opening, no big problem. I will be very focused. I will make up to it in the middle game. And Pragg went on to defend this position.
But I just feel that this whole narrative is quite common with Anish, no? Where he plays this amazing game from the start. He often gets these great positions, and it just feels like this is such high quality chess. But that moment of breaking through or of actually being able to convert that, very often it kind of gets lost somewhere.
Yes, I think that he also, the problem is that he puts an incredible high standard in his games in the first part, yeah, that he plays like unbelievable level, yeah, like 3000 level, and it's very difficult to maintain that, yeah. And then he tries to control everything. He tries to play a perfect game, but it's very difficult to play a perfect game, yeah. So those players who take it maybe a little bit more light, yeah, they don't put these incredible standards, but they are more in like, okay, let's just play somehow. Maybe for them it's easier, you know, to get that final punch in than someone like Anish who tries to really play a fantastic game. I mean, like you can't fault a single move, but you can't control everything in 15 minutes.
Yes, indeed. I think especially in this time format, that's incredibly tough. We're going to take a quick break before round 2, but let me just quickly see what's going on in chat as well. Peter, again, a lot of appreciation for Hans coming in. And while we're on a break, I think let's run a poll because many would have probably picked Magnus as a favorite, but I want to see now. What do you guys think? Do you think Magnus can actually make a comeback in this match? We're finding a very angry, a very motivated Hans today on the board, a dominating performance with the black pieces in round 1. So let's run that poll going. And meanwhile, we're going to go on a short break and be right back.
Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Airthings.
Okay, so let's send a challenge.
Here is challenging. Nice graphics, easy to see. What are you thinking about? You're looking how it can be the most painful?
Exactly. Okay, fine.
That I give up a phone. He wants to be even rude.
The Grunfeld is a very good opening for those of you who are striving to get a double edge.
In this video, we're going to look at the latest developments in the 6 bishop g5 knight rough.
I'm gonna start with sort of my first official Stonewall game.
The idea is not to fight against any opponent move, prevent everything, defend and so on. It's just to move.
This is John. John loves to study chess. This is David. David loves to study chess as well, but efficiently. John spends more time setting up the board and figuring out what's on the page of his book than he gets to study. David likes to take it easy and use his time wisely. David has finished his exercise for today. John should try the same.
Welcome, everybody.
My name is Jan Nepomniachtchi, former world chess champion.
Are starting a new course here for Chessable.
A very special Chessable course.
Master your chess with Judith Polgar.
You know what? I learned a lot.
Welcome back, everyone. What a round one we've had. Magnus Carlsen lost his game against Hans Niemann, and in what style Hans Niemann played, super impressive. The same goes for Levon. Just amazing chess from start to finish by both these players. The other two games ended in a draw. Peter, I'm going to check what are our poll results, what chat feels about Magnus making a comeback. What do you think the world champ needs to do to make that happen?
Well, I mean, somehow to forget about this incredible disaster that struck him in the first game. It won't be easy. I mean, losing with the white pieces and giving the momentum to his opponent. Hans, we know that he's very emotional. If he gets the control, if he gets confident, then he is capable of playing brilliant chess. And this is what I'm expecting now. So it will be very, very tough for Magnus to bounce back. Of course, he's the champion. We know that he has been in situation like this, but it's going to be super tough to come back.
Ritvik saying he's a comeback king, but Hans is more motivated than ever after yesterday's game. Totally agree with that. Also, Peter, do you think it's a possibility that after everything that happened yesterday, seeing this interview, Magnus might have taken Hans a little lightly in today's first game?
It could be. I mean, maybe not even the interview, but the combination of the interview plus the 3-0 score in Duda's favor against Hans, it might have indicated, and we have seen it with Hans before, that sometimes after losing a couple of games and being too emotional, he continued on tilt, yeah? And this is what I feel like it's very impressive, that Hans said, no, it's maybe very nice that I have the chance to play against the world champion Magnus Carlsen, because this is my moment. Yeah, I can make some sensation if I pull myself together and surprise Magnus. And that's what he has done in the first game. I mean, now the match is completely open. I mean, at least Hans has 50% chance, but let's take a look at the poll.
The poll says they believe in their world champion, Peter, 77% to Magnus making a comeback. I think we've seen that happen so many times. And it was definitely a cold shower for Magnus this game one. He needs to get his act together, be completely focused, because he knows that Hans is indeed super motivated. This is how round one went. Alireza and Liam ended in a draw, as did Pragg and Anish. A big game coming up in this match because Anish now starts with the white pieces.
Yeah, Anish starts with the white pieces. Okay, he's usually always no, I thought that Anish has played. No, it's Liam. Again, Liam against Alireza is the first game to start, and they will be blitzing out their moves while the others are catching up. But wow, no, we have to jump right in there to Hans Niemann against Magnus Carlsen. Hans actually went for e4, and Magnus sticks to the French after yesterday beating Anish in a very important game with it.
And that was quite a shocker from Magnus that he chose the French. We don't see him often. I mean, Magnus, we've seen him play everything under the sun, but French is an opening that we haven't seen that much by him. He's played it on day one against Anish and repeats it.
But come on, Hans, go knight c3. I want to see Magnus's preparation. I want to see what Magnus had in store for us after knight c3. Come on, no, knight d2. Of course, it's a very reasonable move. I perfectly understand. I just wanted to get this, you know. My professional interest was that, okay, where is Magnus going? Is it bishop b4? Is it knight f6? We're not going to find out today.
Well, we might not find out today, but we might find out on another day, because it seems like French is something that Magnus has up his sleeve for this tournament. And also Hans has to be prepared for this. He's definitely seen the game against Anish, so he knows he has a direction that he wants to take this onto. No knight c3 in this one, knight d2, takes on d4. Peter, take us through this opening.
Yeah, well, basically, I think also the explanation for knight d2 is quite simple, that Hans is relatively new to e4. I mean, he was a strictly d4 knight f3 player, I think, and only recently, like in the last half a year, I believe he was starting to experiment with e4. And after e6, d4, d5, in order to be able to play third move knight c3, you have to know so much. Yeah, it took me years and years to really feel comfortable. After all those incredible amount of works, I actually feel myself super confident there. But I mean, you really need time. And if you don't have that time, then of course knight d2 gives you much more stability. You have to know much less theory, and suits his tournament situation, I mean match situation also perfectly, that maybe he gets some tiny little pressure and then tries to do something with a little pressure instead of going for some very, very long, complicated forced lines where you have to know everything move per move.
Speaking of forced lines and move per move, interesting opening in the Alireza Liam game as well. Itarash, this started as. Peter, do you want to take a quick look at that one?
Yeah, well, just because here we are getting this structure, and you ask actually me to explain a little bit what's going on, and I somehow anticipated that we're going to see this position. And now that we got this position, now let me tell you a couple of things. So here it might look a bit strange that what is this, that after knight c6, white plays the move bishop b5. And after bishop d7, he trades on c6. And after b takes c6, he comes back with the bishop to d3. But the idea is to claim that the bishop on d7 is actually inferior to being on c8. Because if it's on c8, then maybe some a5, bishop a6 ideas, trading the bad bishop would be much more easy, or even maybe queen b6 and bishop a6, yeah? And white lures that bishop to d7. He wants to rely on this structure. We're going to play short castle, queen e2, and eventually maybe c4, break the structure. This is a position that actually we have been discussing with Peter Svidler during our Olympiad broadcast, because there were a couple of games for this position. And also Anish has done a Chessable course on this position. So it was very interesting to combine and compare what the players were doing and what Anish was giving the course. And Magnus goes bishop d6, queen e2. Yeah, so it's a big theoretical debate.
All right, a big theoretical debate, and we can see a different kind of a Magnus on screen here. He definitely looks like he knows it's going to be a tough match ahead of him, and he can't just take this as lightly as perhaps he did game one. Peter, let's move on and take a look at some of the other boards. Action is on throughout, and I want to jump to the Pragg Anish board if quickly we could take a look at that, because it feels like a reverse Benoni.
Exactly. This is always so tricky and so complicated to evaluate that whom does it favor. Yeah, first of all, it clearly favors the player who has more experience with the structure. Yeah, for example, now I believe one of the things that white is also trying to get that to jump with the knight to e5. But look at this, Pragg is blitzing out a move like bishop e7 to c5. I mean, if this is not a preparation, you need at least 2 hours to think about it, or maybe 2 weeks. So it's really signals to me that Pragg very much knows what he's doing here.
And Anish looks like he doesn't have a clue about this move, because he's really gone into a bit of a think tank. Pragg has got about 16.5 minutes on the clock. And Peter, you're surprised about bishop c5. And the reason for that is often because when white does manage to get a3, b4, it does hit the bishop on c5. What is it that black wants by posting it to this vulnerable spot?
Yeah, well, definitely wants to make sure that this whole knight c2 and eventual a3, b4 moves will never come. Yeah, because if it comes, then it will be terrible news for black. So I'm expecting that he wants to, if the knight moves back to c2, follow it up with a5. He might also want to make sure that his d4 pawn is kind of protected, and he's anticipating the move knight e5, because this knight e5 will be probably the key move in this position. And for example, just, knight e5 on the board. And we might be seeing some trade on e5 and then knight d7 tempo, protecting the bishop. And then black will try to go e65 maybe. Very interesting. I mean, it's a new development. I mean, this is modern chess. It's some new age. I mean, and look, it's still blitzing. Can you believe this?
Still blitzing. I can believe it. Pragg's got some crazy prep, and I think he's in that zone and momentum of having that kind of prep from the Olympiad as well. Bishop d2, so white really wants to get b4, and that's a committal decision. He takes the knight on a3.
Yeah, usually this is a very risky approach, but if he gets b6, bishop b7 in, then he will be slightly better. I mean, if someone, then only black can be better. And now we also see the point behind rook e8, that a move like bishop f4 can now be answered by e65, thanks to the knight and the rook protecting the e5 square. So very it's some super smart play by Pragg.
That's actually a really nice subtlety. Before grabbing on a3, you make sure that you're ready with e5 to defend that rook on b8. So rook e8, a tough move to understand, but now it all makes sense. And after rook b8, Anish still going into a thing, because if black manages to trade off the light squared bishop, then black's doing really well. White has to find a way of fighting that. Does he start with a4, a5 already? Let's say if you go a4, b6 and go a5?
Well, I think that I simply don't care. I mean, I just ignore. I followed my plan. I'm gonna play bishop b7. I mean, if I get rid of these bishops, I mean, then white's king side will be vulnerable. The king on g1 with the pawn on g3. The pawn on d3 will be also vulnerable. I mean, Anish has to go into a deep think here to really understand the finesses of this position. I don't think that you can really decide by just playing some hand move here.
And look at the clock. Anish down to 11 minutes while Pragg is on 17 minutes. Peter, we'll come back and see how Anish fights this clear and direct path that Pragg has with b6, bishop b7. Let's continue on our opening tour. And I see that Alireza has gone for Wesley So's favorite opening.
Yeah, I mean, We have seen yesterday Alireza playing the Berlin defense, which turned out to be a rookie one Berlin, and now today he also plays this very solid new Tarrasch. I mean, this new Tarrasch C takes D5, C takes D4 exploded in popularity in last year in 2021. I mean, and also already such players like dynamic players like Jan Nepomniachtchi, Mamed Yarov, I mean, Alireza, I mean, they have also picked it up. Yeah, it was really Wesley So who started out, but now the people really got attracted to it because Black is holding his ground and it's quite simple play. Yeah, so it's also something that in modern chess might be very sympathetic, that, you know, that it limits White's options. Yeah, it really limits White's options. So I see the reason why people got really attracted to it.
Also, Peter, I don't think we had the chance and the opportunity to mention this on the stream, but from chat and myself, congratulations on Jan's brilliant performance in the candidate. We know you were part of his team. It was a brilliant show by Jan.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, of course, super happy for Jan. And this is also kind of the idea and I'm enjoying that he's becoming more universal. Yeah, everybody knows that he's super good in dynamic play and in sharp, chaotic positions and so on, but he's also willing to take on some boring positions. Yeah, it's I'm liking this because I think in order to become absolutely the best, then you have to be universal. Yeah, you have to adjust to your opponents also. And it's kind of nice. For example, how many games did Jan win with the Petrov? Yeah, with the Russian defense. It's just incredible. People would be thinking that how come Jan plays the Petrov, but look at his results. Yeah, I mean, he wins so many games. Yeah.
And I think it's so important to be this well-rounded universal player to actually go on to become the world champion at some point, because you can't just play one type of chess. And this is also what we've seen from Magnus. I think he's one of the biggest example of being a universal player.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, okay, because it gives you also the chance to adjust to your opponent. Yeah, and you always have to see and sense the moment that in this concrete situation against a certain opponent, how you should be approaching the game, and in order to do that you have to be familiar with this kind of situation. It's and also interesting that Alireza, we have seen him super aggressive at the candidates, and now suddenly in this tournament he's trying to kind of experiment with some completely different openings. I think it's kind of a conscious decision for him to try to get more practice in some dried position which is not yet his cup of tea.
Makes a lot of sense. Peter, I want to ask you one thing that I remember watching Jan's interview after Magnus announced that he will not be playing the World Championship. And Jan was quite disappointed because he was really looking forward to that second chance, to that chance to fight again for the World Championship title against Magnus. As a team, how did you receive that news and what was the feeling like?
Yeah, well, it was definitely a very special moment and a very sad moment because it really was like, you know, driving force fighting for the candidates and okay, that, give us this second match, you know, I mean, okay, somehow we also felt like the match was so unlucky. I mean, the final score didn't do any justice that what happened in the first part of the match, which was very, very even. Jan had his chances. Then this incredible dramatic 6th game, which basically, in my opinion, decided the match. It was the longest game in history, and so on. It was very emotional, and it turned out to be crucial. And I don't count any other games after that. For me, the match finished basically at the moment when Magnus was leading 3.5, 2.5, and I felt like, okay, now we get a second chance to, you know, to bounce back and to challenge Magnus. I felt kind of some emptiness. I felt like, you know, okay, this cannot be true. But that's the new situation. We also have to adjust to it and, okay, take it step by step.
As a player and as a fan of the game, I completely relate to what you're saying. And it's always so inspiring to see that the best players in the world want to fight for the top title against the best player of the world. So it was definitely disappointing. Also, I think not many of us actually expected Magnus to go through with that decision, even though he spoke about it very honestly for months preceding it. But at some point, the hope was that he would change his mind and it would be a different decision or there would be more negotiations. But it wasn't to be. And of course, that would have been a rematch that we all would have been very excited about. But the world champion knows what he's doing, and we'll see what happens. But a big congratulations to you, Peter. It was amazing to see Jan's performance there.
Yeah, thanks a lot once again. And here we see Magnus. Yeah, I mean, look at this. The computer already believes in his position. I mean, apparently some bishop h2 check, but I'm believing that Hans is anticipating bishop h2 check. So the bishop h2, of course, he won't take because recapturing the bishop would run into queen c7 check, losing the very important bishop on c5. So something like king h1, and then hoping to activate the rooks because after all, these bishops are very strong.
You can't even go bishop d6 because of the pin along the d5.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't really return because of rook d1. And I'm kind of curious that then how should black really use the momentum, because it does feel like Hans was just not very well prepared. I mean, for this kind of stuff, it's a very fashionable line. What happened here? Queen e2, knight e7, e5, bishop c7. Yeah, it gives all this kind of dynamics to Magnus. You shouldn't be giving this because he's just so good when he gets a chance to do something. Knight f3, d takes c4, bishop c4, castle. Yeah, he gets the d5 square. I mean, it's like a lovely Caro-Kann. I mean, that's what I somehow first relate to in this position. And yeah, Hans goes for bishop e3, very concrete action. The only weak spot is the pawn on c5, so he tries to put it under pressure, but Magnus goes for this very direct takes on e5, and it all comes down now to some tactical battle after bishop takes e5, that how black can try to seize the initiative, or will he be able to seize the initiative?
Peter, this line that you mentioned with bishop h2, king h1 definitely looks like something that white wants here. What happens if black starts with queen c7, hitting that bishop and threatening on h2? Do you have to take on e7?
Wow. I mean, okay, because I was assuming that this case probably I can just simplify with bishop e7, but
then I take on h2 first.
Yeah, but then I will play g3 anyway.
Yeah, queen e7, g3. So I have to take I have to take the bishop on e7.
Yes, and because of course, yeah, this was the trick also that why I was speechless for a second. Yeah, that this is nice tactics, but luckily I have g3.
G3 saves the day. So what about bishop e7, queen e7? And does this, it's opposite colored bishop. Is this anything for black considering b2 is weak and queen c7? Now bishop h2 is a real threat. It might not be so comfortable to defend both the pawns actually.
Queen exactly, yeah. And queen h4 is also kind of a double attack on the bishop and on checkmate.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's...
And maybe this isn't very comfortable for white, despite being an opposite color bishop position. White, in all probability, will have to fight a pawn down position.
Yeah, and fighting a pawn down when you have this incredible useful pawn on e6. Yeah, this gives all the stability. Yeah, because white's bishop is actually biting on a granite. Yeah, this construction pawn f7 e6 is so effective and against this light squared bishop, and black's bishop on. And Magnus goes queen c7.
On the board, Peter, on the board, queen c7 played and bishop e7 immediately. There was just no other move because of the double attack against the bishop and the pawn on h2. And Magnus doesn't even blink, simply recaptures on e7. And once, well, the first time today at least, it looks like Hans is in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, he goes queen e2, so he goes queen e2, so he's trying to protect the bishop. I mean, yeah, protect the bishop and protect the pawn, and yeah, it was kind of a nice little retreat. Magnus goes queen c7 and g3, bishop takes b2. Wow, so this queen c7, queen takes e7, queen c7 back dance was spectacular, and Magnus found it.
That's actually a really nice maneuver. Peter, can we just show that one more time?
It's so incredibly instructive. I mean, this is what the eagle eye of computer had spotted probably immediately, but Magnus spending some time and spotting this incredible finesse. Yeah, queen c7 attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn on h2, so white is forced to take on e7, and one could argue that yeah, if we don't use the momentum with bishop h2, we will miss out on something, but it does not work. So we have to take back on e7, and probably Hans had foreseen this, that wow, queen e2 actually stops everything, somehow I'm protecting everything back, and Magnus sees deeper. Yeah, queen c7, threatening bishop takes h2 check, so there is no other move than g3. In this case now black can take on b2 because the bishop on c4 is hanging. Wow, very nice play by the champion.
Super stuff. I mean, queen c7, you can still understand because it hits the two pieces at the same time. But this re-maneuvering of the queen to the same square and calculating this entire sequence of moves and realizing that you're ending up with an extra pawn is impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we see that the computer was a little bit confused. The computer maybe wanted to take on b2. It's a very sad move, but basically saying that, you know what, yes, we are pawn down, but here maybe we have better drawing chances because we tried to get active with looks. Of course, it's a very bad position. It's pawn down, but computer believe that it's a bigger chance than the opposite colored position because seemingly opposite colored position is always the humans tend to think that this is very drawish or it gives drawish chances, but it also gives big advantage to the one who is having the chance to attack. And now with the pawn, bishop on d4 and this pawn on e6, so it's clear that white's bishop is basically useless, while black's bishop on d4 will forever be putting the pressure on the f2 pawn.
Wow, amazing stuff. But this one's going to be a long grind, and to defend this one, Hans is going to have to show some super technique and might need a bit of luck. Peter, I've got my eye out on the Alireza board. It started with that new Tarrasch line that you mentioned that often is used for attacking aggressive players to try and become more universal. But I see the position that Alireza has managed to get, and it looks like the initiative is on black's side here.
Exactly. I mean, this kind of new Tarrasch should not be underestimated. I very much remember, you know, that Wesley joined us, I think, during the Skilling Open in the first event when he played it. And he was so polite and he was showing so much. He was asking me that, probably Peter knows a lot about this. And he was asking my opinion. But in fact, I believe that Wesley was inventing this system on that moment. Yeah, before I really haven't seen it. And ever since I'm keeping an eye on it and I'm impressed how well black is doing. I mean, seemingly some bad structure and everything, but a lot of dynamics. And look at this, Alireza has all the chances to get the lead maybe, yeah, with all his active pieces.
He's down a pawn, but it really doesn't seem to matter at all because look at that rook on c2 on the 7th rank. The knight on d2 is pinned. It's just all about black's knight, or as Levon calls them, the horses, to come into power. But Peter, what's the route for that? How do you improve the position of the knights?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are so many tempting options. I mean, first of all, I would like to combine something, I don't know, knight e5 or knight b6 with rook d7, yeah, to put some more pressure on this knight on d2, making sure that white will be forced to play rook hd1, for example, and then we'll never have the chance to play rook ac1 because of tactics. Rook d7 takes d2, and then the rook on c1 will be hanging. So this is
Peter,
also some kind of a temptation.
That's a really cute tactic, potential tactic in the position. Let's just illustrate that with some moves. Knight e5. Let's say you go rook d1 here, trying to control the d2 square, and after rook d7, rook c1. Whenever white tries to trade off a pair of rooks to reduce the pressure, there's this beautiful little tactic with rook d2, and then you pick up the rook on c1. So white doesn't even have this option.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a very nasty kind of dynamic in the position, yeah, because one could argue that black is not threatening anything. Yes, it's true, but what kind of move you can make from the white side? Yeah, the king can never really move to e1 because then knight d3 check is coming. Yeah, you don't want to let that happen. Then maybe knight b2 wins material on the spot. I mean, there are all kinds of problems. So I'm not sure exactly where to jump with the knight, but somehow this knight e5 potentially also having this knight d3 and rook d7 is somehow very charming.
All right, so it looks like Liam could be in some trouble in this game. Alireza having a think. He does look quite relaxed on the camera. A knight e5, a move that looks very strong, Peter. And I think that's definitely the kind of move that Alireza wants to make in this situation. We'll come back and take a look at this. Let's go over to the Levon Duda board. I have it in front of me. And of course, Jan-Krzysztof Duda is trailing Lev after that disastrous loss in round 1. But I feel like it's sort of a dream position that black has gotten in this. Look at that knight on f5. The queen and the rook lined up in the center, and the pawn structure. White's bishop on f2 forever just destined to defend that pawn on d4. It feels like all the dynamics are in black's favor. At some point, he can try and break in the center or on the king side with h4. I don't know where exactly he can break from. Maybe the queen can come to a3, but it looks like white is going to be on the defense throughout.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we would have Levon in our studio and we would show him this position. He would say, yeah, white has a terrible position. I mean, okay, this is really strategically very bad. On the other hand, still, yes, black has everything. Black is super happy. Black is clearly better. But how really do we break through? I believe that in such positions, often you have to be super patient. Yeah, I mean, just pretending in doing something, making your opponent nervous. Yeah, and maybe you are just making some small little moves, you know, that improve your position, and then you drive your opponent crazy, and then your opponent gives you the chance, and then you strike. Yeah, so you don't have to even think about how do I win. Just ask the question: how do we improve the position?
Also, just a quick update. We won't go back to it, but Alireza has played your move knight e5, so Liam definitely needs to think what he needs to do there. Peter, let's get an update on the Prague Anish board as well. And oh wow, that's an interesting position.
Yeah, I think like Anish has at least, I'm very happy that he got a direction. Yeah, that he managed to somehow get a position where everything makes sense for white side as well. Yeah, because we see that black managed to trade the light square bishops, and then one has the feeling that white is risking. I don't feel that now with the bishop on d6 and with the rook on b5, white is risking anything. The move rook d8 might actually run into some c5. I don't know. I'm very tempted to play the move c5 here.
Black's dream is try to get that knight from c6 to e5, but it's never going to happen.
Exactly. It's not going to happen. And I'm really curious that how Prague wants to react to c5. B takes c5, queen c5, knight a7. Is that
maybe you can start with knight a7 and just knight a7.
No, but then we take on b6.
No, but d6 is yeah, you can let's just show that line, Peter. Knight a7, rook b6, rook into b6, cb6, takes on d6, and there's a back rank issue there.
There is some back rank issue. Okay, maybe black is in time, but it's very risky, yeah, very dangerous. However, Anish came back with the bishop to b4. I feel like after this, it should be more or less balanced after bishop b4. I mean, black will be always able to eliminate this bishop with knight takes b4, and then we will capture probably with the a pawn, and then black will get counterplay with rook a2. Yes, we'll have a lovely rook on b5, putting pressure on the b6 weakness, but it should only be enough to compensate for black's activity. I think that black is perfectly fine. How did we get here? So Anish actually played the move queen a4. It was kind of smart because he targets the pawn immediately. Black played b6, very nice pawn sacrifice there by Prague, queen a7, followed by bishop b7. That's the key. You want to trade the bishops, and after bishop takes b7, queen c7 would be the point. Thanks to the pin, we are getting the bishop back. So Anish just retreated immediately. So the bishops are traded, and that's how we got here. Yeah, okay. It's kind of fairly logical. This is all what happened. Rook b5, rook d8, bishop b4, h6, queen e2.
All right, queen e2 is kind of nice because after knight b4, you make sure that black's queen doesn't jump onto f3. But Peter, it's reminding me of our pre-game prediction that this match might very likely be headed towards a playoff. And the way the two have been playing, just attacking, counter-attacking, perfect defense, even position, we might be on point with that prediction. Still a long way to go. Let's head back to the Hans Magnus board. Magnus is also quite strong in these opposite color bishop positions. And I see it feels like he's made a lot of progress.
Yeah, what we have been talking about, yeah, that this f2 pawn is very vulnerable. Black has a lovely bishop on b6, targeting the pawn, and white's bishop is doing nothing, yeah, because it's basically just blocked by the wonderful structure. Magnus also very instructively managed to get g5, g4 in, yeah, fixing the structure, making sure that he will get an outpost for his rook on f3. He's now having all the time in the world to simply activate his king. Yeah, that's going to be the next kind of step to activate. And white is also running out of moves. It's so difficult to decide. I don't know. Maybe when Magnus will march toward the queen side. Come on. Yeah, maybe he can just march towards the queen side, because the rook is tied to the f2 pawn. And imagine black's king gets to a3, and then we get a5, a4 in. How is this bishop going to take care of the other weakness on a2? Yeah, and Hans is trying king
Oh,
E1,
he wants to
bishop
go bishop
D1.
D1. He wants to get his bishop back to D1, and F5 was not possible because the E6 pawn is hanging. And Magnus doesn't even wins. He just goes A5 immediately. So after bishop D1, what does he want? Does he want to go rook A3?
Yeah, he wants rook A3, and then his A pawn will be very strong. So basically, White has no time to taking on G4. Then rook takes A2, A4, bishop D4, and we are still completely pegged. I mean, and the pawn is coming. It's unstoppable. Basically, it almost feels like it's game over. So White has to kind of stick to waiting strategy with king E2, king E1, and then the king march comes to play. We might be seeing this king march all the way to A3.
This is quite nice. Peter, do you think we can just see how Magnus made it so easy with this opposite color bishop? If we just back up to that point, yeah, and just let's quickly do a play-by-play.
Yeah, using his activity. And the point is that Hans also doesn't know which trade would benefit him because, okay, he wants to trade pieces, but Black is having such a long-term pressure everywhere. Yes, so one looks traded, Black activates. So it looks like White is making progress with Queen F3, but Magnus had foreseen that takes, looks easily check, King E2, G5, a very timely move. He gets his pawn to G4, fixes this pawn. This is the key, and now we are seeing everything exactly as we discussed. Yeah, that we are seeing all this. A5 had been played, King E2, no King E2 happened. And then the Black king is just coming. Yeah, King E2, King F6. And Black is now also pushing F5. White is, hang on, but Magnus played F5, so he did not continue King D4, King C3, which I expected. Probably he did not want to let White play Rook D1, Rook D2 or something.
But you lose the F2 pawn then.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it felt to me like if White can't do anything, then okay, White just not to walk all the way to B2 and A3. However, maybe Magnus had spotted already some idea.
Also, he can go King F6, go E5, go E4, and then continue with that march.
Yeah, maybe that's his idea. In any case, I don't see any surviving chances for Hans here, and Magnus might just bounce back immediately.
Yeah, that is indeed a very impressive technique there. I think Magnus has time and time again shown, one, that he has this incredible ability of bouncing straight back after a loss. He doesn't need that time to stop the bleeding. He often, something lights up in him, and we often see this very different Magnus from the previous game. We've seen that happen throughout the tour. And also some great technique here. Opposite color bishops and queen endings, I think, are two very instructive plays that we can learn a lot from by Magnus.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that I have been already sometimes critical about Magnus's situation, that, oh my God, how he will react to this and that. And he always proved me wrong, like, okay, Peter, why are you worrying for me? Stop worrying about me, worry for yourself. I mean, really, Magnus, I mean, bouncing back with Black in this way after just losing that horrible game from the White side. And what you said, that he doesn't need to stop the bleeding. And this is very, very important. I mean, this is a special skill, because it's, I mean, what is the usual kind of technique? Yeah, you lose a painful game, okay, then take it slow, try to recover, and then slowly when you get back your composure, then you will try something. But it seems like he's able to adjust to the situation very quickly, which is a clear character trait of real big champions.
Yeah, and he's done it with the Black pieces. A little bit more technique to show in this one, Peter. Let's go back to the Alireza board. The knights have landed themselves onto D3 and G4, and that's far into the enemy camp. Bishop E4 played, pinning that knight on D3, but it does give up this F2 pawn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically that's everything that we spoke about happened. Yeah, that suddenly White is completely packed, nothing moves. White does not have the freeing move Rook AC1 because of Rook DD2, as we mentioned. And Black is threatening to jump in with the knight to D3. We are in a terrible kind of pin. Knight B2 is a big threat, winning material maybe. So, no, Knight B2, there is Rook A2. Yeah, now that the pawn moved to A4, we should show this, that after Knight B2, there is the nice defense, Rook A2, suddenly counter-pinning Black's Rook on C2. Of course, Alireza is not falling for it. He's bringing new forces into the attack, Knight G4. Bishop E4, Knight G takes F2, and I feel like White is in a lot of trouble.
Big trouble for White, and it looks like we'll find out how this goes. Peter, let's quickly go on to the Jan Krzysztof Duda Levon board as well. I'm looking at it very, very strategic and an interesting play here by Black by Duda. He's offering a queen trade. And my first feeling is that if White accepts it, it should be a lost endgame. That pawn on b4, it really cramps up White's position with that a2, b3 pawn. And Black has this free hand in the center. Essentially, White will be playing a pawn down.
Exactly. I mean, okay, this is incredibly beautiful for Black. I mean, the knight on e6 is very nicely placed. Yeah, targeting the d4 pawn, targeting the other pawn weakness on f4. The pawn structure makes sure that White has no counterplay, and Black will come with b6, c5.
Yeah. One line I want to point out, queen takes b4, a takes b4, bishop d2, trying to trade it doesn't work because after knight d4, bishop b4, knight e2 check really shows the problem with White's pawn structure. And now you win the f4 pawn.
Yeah, it actually feels like it's a technical win. I mean, yes, it's Levon playing from the white side. He's very tricky. He's putting definitely some very tricky counterplay. I mean, he will put defense and maybe he will try some queen e, but queen e2, knight takes d4. Yeah, he goes queen d3. Okay, keeps an eye on the d pawn.
Do you not care about queen e1? I would care about queen e1.
Well, that's why queen d3 did not come so naturally to me, but as well.
With queen e1, you have to go what, bishop f2?
Bishop f2, then there is also a move like knight takes f4. Yeah, it's wonderful, but do we need, because there is queen takes f5 check. Okay, let's just show this. Yeah.
And you might have this, like, let's just show this line. And now knight f4, queen f5, g f5, bishop e1. There is knight e2, knight d4, but White gets this g5 passer and some play. a5 is hanging as well.
Yes, yes. I mean, from Black side, we just feel like we don't need all these adventures. Yeah, I mean, it's
definitely.
Yes, so much safer to just control everything. On the other hand, the reason why I'm loving the move queen d3 as well, that whenever Black plays b6, then White will have queen a6 counter attack. Yeah, so Levon is just as always. Yeah, and Duda is provoked for queen e1.
He goes queen e1. I mean, you won't play b6. You won't allow queen a6. Maybe you'll go b5 at some point, but definitely not allow that play with queen a6. Bishop f2, Peter, this line with knight f4, I don't think it works. And I'm just wondering, how can Black continue building the pressure? Queen c1, there's still bishop e3.
Hang on, there is also a move like queen h1 with the idea of queen h3 check.
Oof.
You know, because it would be a fork with knight takes f4. I don't know. Okay, White would move the queen, of course, but then we would get some light squares. I mean, just to show how tricky, how dangerous this position is.
Absolutely. Well, he's gone queen c1 and bishop e3, so still not totally stable with that queen. Maybe just queen b2 and hitting that pawn on a2.
Exactly. Queen b2 on the board.
And if you go a4, that's additional weakness.
Exactly. Then we will have this b3 weakness, but White has to play a4.
Again, all queen trades and an endgame of a pure bishop versus knight, the knight will just dominate. And an update from Tad, Peter, that we do have a result. Magnus has made his comeback. He has leveled the score with a win, and we've got Hans with us. Let's hear it from him.
Masterpiece the other way around this time.
No, I think it was a very, very bad game on my part. Just blundered and then should have been a bit more careful.
Good luck in the remaining match.
Always very short in his answers, Hans Niemann. Obviously disappointed. He got a great start to the day.
Peter, that's quite incredible of Hans to even give an interview at this moment, I have to say.
Yes, and it's perfectly understandable that he tried to make it as short as possible, yeah, because he needs to focus on the next game. He needs to forget about it. I think he was also kind of in the tricky spot that he didn't know how to approach the situation, yeah, that should he play quietly, and it's not his style. I mean, he should have been more Hans, yeah, to be more aggressive or something, because it was just so uncharacteristic for him to give the initiative for Magnus.
Yeah. No, also, I think it's just a very, these moments are so strange and vulnerable also for Hans to be talking about the game right now. So I'm still sort of taking that in, that little interview that we have. The players still have 2 more big games coming up. And big fights there. Meanwhile, Peter, Levon Duda has just played a quiet move, King C7. It looks like this game is going to go on for a while. Levon definitely on the defense here. Where should we jump to?
Well, actually, everything has finished. Alireza has won the game because there was just no way for Liam to avoid lose of material. I mean, it's incredible construction that, you know, this was the situation like 3-4 moves already, and nothing changed. And the knight b2 move eventually came. Rook a4, knight b2, rook a2, e5. And now
very
simply
important, Peter, we should point out that after knight d1, rook c2, black's knight would have been trapped on d1. So you can't do that trade.
Yes, no, but that's the point. Yeah, he doesn't want to get pinned, but he has foreseen that actually e4, e3 is coming and white is pegged. And whenever the king moves, then the knight will jump with a check and it will be decisive. So that's how after king f3, rook d2, it was game over. So incredible win by Alireza, and I think he will be very pleased that the new strategy, of trying some so-called seemingly boring positions has also a lot of dynamics, because he's playing against super players who want to play for a win, and they will be looking for chances, and then just playing something, you know, solid can also give you good chances to win. And the other game, Anish Giri against Pragg, ended in a repetition of moves, because simply both players understood that their opponent got the maximum setup. And we see here that Pragg started chasing the rook from b5, knight a7, rook e5, knight c6 back. The rook went back to b5, knight a7, so very logical draw. And we are getting closer and closer to what you kind of predicted right from the start, that maybe we're going to see an Armageddon between these guys.
I won't be surprised. I don't know about the Armageddon, but I think a blitz game we can definitely expect. Let's stick to the Levon board. And I'm also seeing our chat, Peter, many people pointing out that that was perhaps a little, that Hans did not say bye, or it was a slightly rude interview. And I have to disagree with chat there. I think already the fact that Hans came up for this interview and agreed to do it at this moment after beating the world champion, but then losing to him, having 2 games to go, very few people would actually do that. It's the most that we can expect from a player.
Yeah, absolutely. I also feel like, you know, the cameraman understood that it's a good idea to ask Hans for an interview, because we are getting some emotions, and I'm loving it. I think it's always very nice, and that he kept it short was perfectly understandable. Now he has to get to his resting room as quickly as possible. He has to do preparation. He has to rest, clear his mind. Again, you know, he has to readjust to the new situation, because before the match, he definitely was expecting some very tough match against Magnus. Then it all changed by winning that first game. Then all the new emotions and everything, probably he didn't know exactly how to deal with them. Now he lost that game, and now he has to again regroup.
Two very, very big games coming up for Hans. 100% he needs to find these couple of minutes to just get his thoughts back together. Meanwhile, Peter, Levon has managed to sneakily get his queen on the other side of the board. And now there are some real counter threats on black. And it just looks like Lev might survive this now.
Exactly. I mean, I told you that Levon is some kind of a very tricky master of creating counterplay from nowhere. I mean, he knows his position is awful, but he will put maximum resistance, and being able to activate the queen via e2, e5, and then queen b8, and then queen g8 shows very nice defense. And also Duda is down to 1 minute 20 seconds. I mean, not easy. On the other hand, with knight f8, Duda insists that no, okay, you kind of got a good defense, but I still believe that I can torture you. So probably Duda is planning to retreat with his queen and somehow try to trade the queens. But Levon will probably hide even in the corner on h8, but he will not trade, that's for sure.
He's never going to trade queens in this position. And definitely this has been the best position that Levon has had in this entire game. Just the fact that black's knight also has to retreat to f8, taking away the pressure from d4 and from f4, speaks volumes about how Levon has managed to create his own chances. Queen b4 does put pressure on the b3 pawn, but white will always have these checks to counter that. He starts with queen g7, and after queen e7, I still don't think he wants to play queen e5.
No, not at all. I think he will hide on h8. I mean, he needs to hide on h8, because actually the queen on h8 is very irritating. That, queen e7 on the board, I'm expecting queen h8.
But after queen h8, Peter, can black try to go queen d6 and knight e6 somewhere? So let's say queen h8.
Yeah, but then I will always protect with bishop e3. So whenever...
Yeah, you always have bishop e3.
Yes, whenever you attack this pawn, I will just protect, and in this that I have this active queen which will always disturb you.
So black might actually have to go king e8, queen at 7, but you'll still never trade. You'll either go
Yeah,
queen
then
f6
I will
or
jump
queen
back.
e5.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why this queen on h8 was really irritating me from the start.
It's a very nice square. Very unconventional, unique, that the queen is super good on h8.
Yeah, exactly, because we have access to the e5 square. Oops. We are having access to the e5 square and eventually also to b8 or a8, depending on the situation. Can you imagine a queen a8 double attack on the pawn on b7, pawn on a5? That would be also hilarious. Levon taking his time. Okay, it's interesting. It's not so easy psychologically to put the queen, and it's on the board, queen h8.
I mean, if any player in the world would make a move like queen h8, it's got to be Lev, right? He's so creative and he knows that these ideas come to him naturally. And Peter, yesterday, as Lev said, you and him have the exact same style. You could predict it. He's played it.
Yes, of course. I mean, okay, we were both coached by Arshak Petrosyan, of course, yeah, and all this Armenian spirit and everything. My favorite player was also Tigran Petrosyan from my childhood. So I was breathing all this Armenian knowledge into myself right from I was 10 years old.
So queen h8 is the school of Ashok.
Yeah, well, I mean, yesterday's king d8 also, it was Tigran Petrosyan school, this king d8. That's why I had to mention poor Anish. I mean, probably things like I lost this match. Why did I deserve it that Peter and Levon are even laughing about king d8, king c8? It's not their game, so it's funny. But yeah, it just, we had to show it because it was lovely.
You know,
no offense to Anish.
Of course, Peter. And you know, this position, king f7, if white doesn't want to...
Oh my God, but queen e5, this does not fit with the Armenian school. Then takes on e5, knight e6, king walks to c7, b6, c5, long terms, we are lost. This is just
a
lost.
Very surprising decision because the queen on h8 was just beautiful. There was nothing that black could do as long as the queen stayed on h8.
Exactly, yeah. There was no way of trapping it. Yeah, so why did Levon, yeah, now Duda is done to 30 seconds, but it does not matter because you put knight on e6 and then
you go b6, you go c5.
Exactly, then you get king to c6 and slowly you advance. Nothing moves for white. Wow, I mean, Levon believes that he can set up a fortress here. No, I mean, if he would be black, he would just be thinking that he's winning.
But also, Peter, let's just have on our analysis both that moment when he played queen e5 with the queen on h8. You can make this move at any time, even when there's pressure on f4. Why go for it immediately? I'm just trying, is there something that he was afraid of? It's so hard to understand this move by Lev.
Yeah, very strange. Yeah, I just did not see any real threats that black could get. But okay, now we have the current position, and apparently he believes. But I mean, how do you believe that b6 and then followed by c5, king c6 won't win the game? It's just so shocking. This knight on e6 is a monster.
It's just very difficult to understand this. Can white try and maybe white wants to aim with bishop e1, and once he takes on c5, let's just play a few moves, Peter. We've got the live board with us. b6. Let's wait with white. Let's go bishop g3. And you place a king c7.
Yes, I put king c7.
Let's wait with the bishop somewhere. Bishop f2.
Yeah, and okay, then
E1.
we push.
Maybe bishop e1. Bishop e1, and you know he's gone
but
for another
wow,
plan.
What? b5. Why on earth? Oh,
why? And
no.
now bishop e1. Don't you just go bishop e1 now?
No, I mean, okay, he will still have this c5 break, but I mean, it's just so
but
strange.
How, Peter? After bishop e1, what break do you have?
No, I mean, but this is very strange. Maybe b4. Maybe b4 is possible. Who knows?
For white?
Mean, giving some counterplay, maybe b4 is possible.
And Tad indeed is informing us that b4 is very strong here, Peter. Well spotted on that. But even if white just plays something simple and, well, more human, according to me, just bishop e1 and putting pressure on a5, you force b4 and then you put the bishop back on f2.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a little bit shocked also that I see Duda's clock, yeah, with 12 seconds. Why on earth on 12 seconds do you make such a committal move? You can just gain some time by playing king c7, king b7, king c7, king b7, and then decide afterwards how you play with 40, 50 seconds on the clock. And Levon just waits. Okay, he waits with bishop e3, but I am now, okay, now Duda just wants to look everything done and then believes that c5 break will be enough.
He
okay,
wants to
very
put a
instructive
knight on f5
also.
as well. Go knight g7, knight f5, and then the bishop on f2 might not have too many moves left.
I mean, very interesting. I mean, now the question that how do you play? Do you play b4? Do you take on a4 and try to insist that a4 is a weak? I don't know exactly what. Okay, he goes king c7. He wants to get king to b6.
It's all such committal moves, bishop e1, and this should have been played earlier to force the move b4. And now black can go king b6, and this was the point, Peter. Why not go bishop e1 when the king was on d7?
I guess he was worried of some knight f4 check, but I'm not sure if knight f4 check was of any importance. Yeah, king a6. Okay, but even here, what does black really want? He wants to put white into a Zugzwang, or?
He wants to go with the knight to f5, but with the king on a6, watch out for that e pawn as well.
Yeah, and then also the pawn on f4 will be vulnerable. I don't really believe that he will want to move his knight. No, he's just fooling around. I mean, I'm not liking this. You should have been fooling around with the king before making the committal move b5.
Or just don't fool around at all.
But hang on, I mean, he will have some, I mean, because my idea was to play b6 and then king c7, c5, then king c6, and eventually b5 later, yeah? Depending on the situation. But he's just moving around with his king.
I have a feeling that at some point he's going to try to get the knight to f5, the king to e6, because if he's able to win the h4 pawn for the f4 pawn, it might give black chances.
No, definitely that would be a wonderful news for black, but I will always insist with bishop e1, bishop f2. I mean, just I will pass against knight f5. I won't be provoked to try to grab the pawn on f4. Besides, I mean, with bishop e1, you always have to watch out for a5 pawn, yeah? It means that you will have to play b5, b4, closing the queen side, which I'm not sure he wants to do so quickly.
Once black commits to b4 and really closes the queen side, I think it's much easier for white to defend the position. He's gone for it immediately because always he had to watch out for this idea of white going b4 and creating a passer.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, yeah, he does this knight g7, but I just don't see the harm. I mean, okay, I just play bishop e1 and I just gonna go bishop f2, bishop e1. I mean, what's
All right,
the problem?
what about this plan? I'll put my knight on f5. I'll get my king on e6 and go c5.
So this is the idea. And then after bishop e1, c5. Yeah, something like this will have to be tried.
If he wants to try, it feels like it could be a plan, Peter, because I don't see any other break in the position.
Yeah, it's the only plan, yeah. Yeah, will be interesting. Yeah, now also Levon's clock is ticking down. I'm just a little bit surprised that why not the systematic b65. But maybe Duda knows what he's doing. I mean, he has a clear vision. Yeah, he's playing the game. He might have foreseen his break that he's intending to achieve.
I don't know. For me, the most surprising moment was Levon deciding to go queen e5.
Yeah, that was shocking. I mean, if you would have asked me that what are the chances Levon going queen e5, then I would have tell you 0%. I mean, absolutely. I mean, just 0% Lev will play queen e5, and there you have it.
All right, and now Lev is thinking he's going down on the clock, down to the second speeder. We've got the live board. Let's just quickly show this plan that we're talking about, because white really has not much to do. We're going to see it on the board soon, I feel. King comes to e6, knight comes to f5, and then there will be a c5 break. And it's happening as we speak. It's what we're
wow, and Levon goes for bishop d2. We talked about this, that this trade will be. Yeah, but it's probably a panicky reaction. He has probably foreseen that if he just sits tight, then there is some way through. And Tadeas was mentioning that actually the main plan was black getting the king to e6. If white just waits, yeah, sits, and then black goes knight e7 and then goes for c5 and eventually knight c6. Okay, so we are getting the same position now. Black will even play king e6 and then take on h4.
Let's also quickly point out, Peter, that knight h4, knight f3 was too dangerous because it would have trapped the knight on f3.
But hang on, he's allowing this. He's allowing this, actually.
Knight f3 now.
So he's absolutely fearless. Yeah, Duda is just completely fearless.
Ignacy pointing out that I'm losing my mind over this game. I absolutely am. Just everything from queen e5 and then giving up this h4 pawn. I am in shock.
Yes. I mean, I know that you always like to take control and everything, and white was giving up the control. Yeah, that's the trick. Yeah, and there was this, yeah, because Tadeusz is mentioning the point that I was actually also trying to highlight before, that with king e6 and knight on f5, maybe there is this bishop takes before idea, but I just couldn't make it work. But apparently in that exact position, it would have worked. So Duda is correct with knight takes h4.
And f3 is hanging now. So how is this line that you were mentioning? e6 is an idea that Lev is definitely looking at now.
Yeah, but he didn't go for it. Yeah, he played king e2, and okay, now it should just be lost.
Yeah, because this h4 h pawn is a real passer, while white's f pawn is meaningless.
Yeah, no. I mean the h pawn, and then eventually some break might happen, might even not be necessary.
You know, Peter, I'm just wondering if black didn't have this h pawn, it's probably still a draw, and white had this extra f pawn.
Yeah, now he will regroup. Yeah, knight g7, king f5, knight e6, and then followed by c5, d4. And I mean, this pawn and the new passer will decide the game.
And Lev shaking his head there. I mean, he just had everything under control in that moment. Queen h8, just brilliant play of getting that queen into the game. But now things have gone horribly wrong for black. For white, you just don't give this h passer.
And what an incredible bounce back. Yeah, Magnus bounced back with black after losing the first game, and Duda is about to bounce back as well against Levon.
It's an absolute domination on the light squares with the knight coming on to e6 and the c5 break. And now you're always tied down to defending this h pawn. This is a nightmare ending to hold.
Yeah, basically, I think c5 just wins on the spot. Yeah, c5,
c5,
d4.
d takes c5, d4.
Yeah. And we create another passer, yeah?
And you have no time to go c6 because c7 is defended. And if you move the bishop, you go bishop f2, you take knight c5, you take knight b3. Levon Aronian, they're very disappointed. And he knows that it's all gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Wow, and Duda, okay, this is also correct. I mean, he has 15 seconds on the clock. He just wants to gain some time before deciding on the final break.
But it's his moment. He knows that he needs to do this. And he's gone for it, Peter, c5 on the board.
Yeah. Yeah, dc, d4, and I mean, actually, Duda has managed to get everything that he was dreaming of, yeah? So that was the reason behind this b5 idea. He had kind of foreseen all this. But yeah, there could have been this very dangerous moment that if Levon goes bc, b4 there, at that moment with little time on the clock, I don't know how Duda would have reacted to it. It could have been very tricky.
But b4 is a very difficult move to make with just seconds on the clock.
No, but Levon had a lot of time at that moment. Yeah, it was exactly that Duda had very little time. So I felt like it's very tempting for Levon to try to create some mess, yeah, on the board. Actually, really strange.
And perhaps just trading this queen on e5 just goes on to show that for Lev, he just believed that he can hold this endgame without doing much. So the option of trying to create this mess with b4 was never on his radar.
Yeah, but I mean, basically, I'm a little bit speechless. I can't really explain what went through in Levon's head. Yeah, now after knight c6 he can just design, or knight c5 he can design. I mean, basically, okay, and any move is just finished.
Pick up the a pawn, march down with the b pawn. What an incredible comeback by Duda, though. I mean, losing that first game, and actually, Peter, both Magnus and Jan Krzysztof lost the first game in a bit of a crushing style, and then to bounce straight back in game 2. Kudos to both the players.
Yeah, absolutely kudos. But also, I feel like they are both white players. I mean, both Levon and Hans should be very angry at themselves, because you shouldn't be giving such positions to your opponent. Yeah, it just, I mean, it went out of control quite quickly. Also, Magnus takes the initiative with black. Also here, Duda got a dream position when we joined in the battle on move 20 already. It was clear that black is in total control. So something really backfired there.
And it's so interesting to see the arena right now because we see Hans sitting behind Duda, looking at Duda's computer screen. Often in tournaments, we see players walking around, checking out the other boards, what's going on. But here we see Hans on his own chair with the screen on and looking at Jan Christoph's screen and trying to evaluate what's going on.
Yeah, because actually the games are about to start, and yeah, now Levon will resign because he will also lose the bishop. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, king c2 runs into knight c3 trick. Yeah, settling queen, and king takes b2, knight d1 check, takes the bishop on f2. So yeah, it's very tricky. I mean, not tricky at all. It's finished, but I mean, this kind of defense. I mean, ever since this queen e5 appeared, yeah, we felt like it should be lost.
But that said, once the whole game was a lot of pressure. Let's hear it from Lev, what he has to say about this one.
Aronian, it was a long battle here now, but eventually it seems to be the black play going on in your match.
Oh yeah, I think I made some inaccuracies in the middle game, and then it was a difficult position to defend. Yeah, he played very well.
And was that the main reason for your loss now? Was it a good opposition play, pretty much?
Yeah, I think a bit of a sloppy play in the middle game, and then yeah, I think he played very well, so it's fine.
Thank you, Levon.
Thank you.
Jan Christoph, you're getting praise from your opponent here, saying he thinks you played a very good game. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, at times I played reasonably well, but at times also I was wondering like. A lot of stuff. For example, I just forgot about this queen e3, queen e5 idea, which was kind of very upsetting because I mean Levon basically was trying to was playing for a fortress, which could work, but he was very passive, and I mean I should have done. I mean I could have played in a way, you know, not to allow him to get any activity, and I failed to do so. Also, I'm not sure about this. I mean, it was very. It wasn't easy actually to judge, you know, which position is winning, which is not, and I'm also not pleased with the b5 move. I mean, maybe it was okay, but maybe it was winning. But why to do it like straight away? I could have, you know, like. I mean, I had so many moves, you know, could have played like I don't know 20 moves and only then played b5. And actually, I'm not sure if I was winning if he just stayed, didn't sacrifice his pawn on h4.
But the result was winning, so you struck back. It's 1-1. Congratulations, Jan Christoph.
Thank you.
Oh, there's some great insights there. And I think that just goes on to show what really happened there. Yes, Levon managed to create his chances with queen e5, but throughout the game, he was under a lot of pressure. He was on the defense throughout with this pawn structure we saw. And very often, it's move by move, slowly the player can crumble. And I feel that throughout the game, when you're on the defense, to suddenly switch to finding a move like b4, creating a mess can often be a challenge.
Wow, sorry, Tanya, to interrupt, but look at this. Magnus played a3 move. I mean, okay.
This is not a mouse slip, Peter.
This is not a mouse slip. It's intentional, you know, like I bounce back, it's 1-1, and now I'm going to play a3 and we take it from there. I mean, okay. I really did not want to, but I felt like after a3, we have to talk about this.
But, you know, we've seen Magnus do this throughout the tour, no? Especially in these online events. We've seen him play f3. We've seen him play, well, now a3. We've seen him play all these new openings that he's coming up with. And very often, it puts the pressure on the opponent that you need to show me something, because otherwise it's a bit uncomfortable to face this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And you remember there was a question after Jan won the candidates, and it was not yet clear what will be Magnus's choice. That what is your kind of advice, or what do you say to Magnus? And then I believe Jan was saying, yeah, just stop playing this a4 h4 nonsense in the first moves. And Magnus, you know, played a3, which is a very fundamental move, because I mean, it's basically like playing from the black side d4, d5, and you have this extra move. So black is not able to play the move c5, because then white will take dc5 and is ready to protect the pawn. Yeah, so it's a very tricky move that people might underestimate that, yeah, what is this a3? How can you play like this? But actually, he's tempi up compared to any kind of d4, d5 positions.
And after making a move like a3, then you make all these normal moves. And suddenly the position is absolutely fine because a3 at some point will be useful in the middle game anyway. And it also puts this psychological edge over the opponent. Although I look at Hans, and Hans doesn't seem like he's stressed about this at all. Knight f3 played, Hans taking his time to think about what structure he wants to take against this trolling that Magnus has just done with 1a3.
I remember that when Magnus was trolling Ivanchuk, he picked the wrong one, yeah, because Ivanchuk went on to punish him in Monaco 2009, I believe, or 2011, when it was. Magnus played a3 and got punished by Chucky. Now the big question is, will he be punished by Hans as well? Or Magnus simply got more experience? Yeah, look at this. Yeah, he plays c4, he kind of looted the bishop to f5. Magnus has a plan. Magnus knows what he's doing.
So even though he plays moves like 1f3, 1a3, he still has an idea and a plan. And I'm just wondering if this is something that he decides the day before, or those 10 minutes that he gets in his room between the games where he says, okay, you know what, let's have some fun, let's go a3.
No, I think this he probably already has a little bit from maybe before the tournament. He thinks in certain situations, maybe he would like to play something. It also explains that his first game went like a total disaster from the white side. And maybe he just felt like, you know what, I don't want to get into any theoretical discussion. Hans is very well prepared. Let's just play chess. And I'm also shocking my opponent with a move like a3. And it seems like we are getting some kind of a Slav. Yeah, usually white's pawn is on e3 instead of the pawn on a3. But okay, it's a close position. It does not really matter so much.
The shock value has definitely worked, but I like that Hans hasn't wasted too much time. We'll come back to this and see what happens. Peter, let's go on to some of the other boards. Let's do a quick opening tour, and I want to jump to the Praggnanandhaa Anish game. A lot of moves have been played, and we had a Roy Lopez.
Yeah, well, it's very tricky, yeah, because whenever I look at the position, I feel like they are playing anti-Berlin, but the moves a6, bishop a4 were included. A part of that, it's everything anti-Berlin. Yeah, d3, bishop c5, c3 castles, bishop takes c6 takes, knight takes e5. Yeah, so we basically have the position with the pawn on a7. Now we have with the pawn on a6. And yes, I know exactly the variation where it's supposed to be that pawn on a7 is even better than on a6, but it does not really change the evaluation if you know what you are doing. And I believe that Anish knows. Yeah, d4, bishop b6, castles, d takes e4, bishop g5, h6, bishop takes f6, queen f6, knight d2. One would argue that it's more or less a fresh position, but looking at the clock situation, Anish is very familiar with this position. c5 takes, queen e6, some slightly mysterious queen moves, but you have to know what you are doing. I mean, it's some preparation. Rook e1 takes, rook d8, knight f3 back, and the mysterious final touch, queen f5, which is definitely a move that Anish has in his file. Maybe the pawn on a7, maybe the pawn on a6, and he knows that computer thinks it's perfectly fine. So maybe he just wants to develop now the bishop.
Developed a bishop, but I would put it to b7. He's gone for bishop b7. Feels like a nice diagonal you wanted to. So you're down a pawn, but you've got these two very strong bishops. The d4 pawn is a weakness, and definitely looks like more than enough compensation. But Pragg also looks like he's absolutely prepared to face this position. Plays the move queen c2, defends that e4 knight, and you can't really go for bishop takes d4. Can he go for bishop takes d4 actually? Bishop d4, maybe it's possible.
Well, maybe it's possible. Of course, if your opponent blitzes things out like queen c2 so quickly, you might feel like bishop d4 is the move your opponent is expecting and is happy with. Yeah, it's kind of the logical kind of psychology, the human psychology. And the big question is also, does white have a next move? Yeah, so it's also kind of tempting that, hang on, what happens if I, for example, just make a move like rook a8, protecting the pawn, just in case, and then I'm gonna hit on d4. It's not clear if white can really do so much.
I'm not actually seeing a tactical refutation to immediately taking on d4, because the queen on c2 is also tied down to the defense of the e4 knight. And I'm just wondering if it's something more strategic, like just picking up the bishop and putting the knight
c5, yeah?
Yeah, maybe there is no tactical refutation.
Yeah, and okay, I mean, after all, we have vulnerable structure. Yeah, that's what I would be a little bit worried. I mean, maybe we don't need to go for it so quickly.
It's amazing. Once again, it feels like Anish is the one who's thinking. So Prague just showing some crazy preparation, Peter. It looks like he's again out-prepared, Anish.
Well, I mean, it's, I don't think out-prepared, but he knows what he's doing. First of all, if with white, you go for this bishop takes c6 line. Yeah, if you are not fully armed, then why do you go for it? Yeah, you only go for it if you know that actually you have some ideas. Yeah, you definitely have analyzed the position very deeply. And it was quite impressive from Anish's side that he was so confidently, quickly reacting to it. And it's the first moment when he's taking his time, when he probably knows that the position is fine. So let's find that last final touch that is required to make everything absolutely fine.
And that, I mean, rook c8 is what you're mentioning could be the move here that black could be considering, because bishop d4, knight d4, rook d4, knight c5, I really like that endgame for white.
Yeah, I mean, if we think about that, maybe there are no threats in the position, maybe even something like a5, a4 are moves, yeah, just to push this pawn, because black is relying on the two bishops. In any case, will be very interesting to see how Anish deals with the position, but I believe that we have some incredible action in the Alireza Liam game. And by the way, a lot at stake. If Alireza with the white pieces manages to win this game, then he wins the match on the spot.
It's true. He's got a 1-point lead. If he wins with the white pieces, it's match over. So at least Liam needs to keep things under control for a fourth game. And G5 has been committed. So there is no, well, safe play, so to say. But that's always hard to do against a player like Alireza. Peter, do you want to take it from the top? Because there's a lot going on here.
Exactly, yeah. And we will also be rushing to the current position because all kinds of sacrifices are possible. So yes, this is the Yurtaev system, yeah, with the bishop on c5, d for bishop b6, rook e1, castles, bishop g5. So Alireza goes for a slightly offbeat line, but it always exists. I feel like Liam got careless. I mean, against this bishop g5, bishop h4 with all this pin going on, I don't think that you are supposed to take ed4. It's like asking for trouble. Bishop d5, the pin, there we see the pin is an issue. You can't take the bishop because of bishop takes d8. I mean, bishop d7, c takes d4, and after g5, bishop takes c6, yeah, making sure that black won't be able to take knight takes d5, yeah, because then he would be very happy. So bishop c6, bishop takes c6, and all eyes on Alireza. Will he take knight takes g5? Will he try to include somewhere some moves like queen c1 and queen c1 on the board? Yeah, queen c1, I think it's kind of a thematic move in this position. Hitting the bishop, also eyeing the g5 pawn. So the big question is, how do we follow up bishop takes c4? I think the answer is quite clear that knight takes g5, I believe. Should be the move, yeah, knight takes g5. But where does this lead? Doesn't look so clear. I mean, knight g5, for example, we take h5, how do we lose?
Just queen g5 check.
Yeah, queen g5, king h7. And rook takes e4. Okay, thank you very much.
And then queen h5 is game over. So you might have to go bishop g6 then.
Yeah, you have to go bishop g6. Yeah, that was the line that I was actually having in mind. And after queen f6, however, white just wins the pawn, and black, I mean, white protects back the d4 pawn, yeah?
And Peter, rook e3, rook h3, rook h8 is something to watch out for the entire game after the queen trade.
Yeah, and also if you play something like rook e8 or you trade first on f6, okay, I don't know which one, then white can also simply just develop the knight. Threatens also knight d5.
This looks very bad for black. Now, after queen c1, I think bishop e4 is just too dangerous. So what happens? But if black falls back with the bishop, knight g5 is still in the air, no?
Yeah, exactly. I think that knight g5 is coming regardless. And then the big question is, I mean, okay, here, this is very uncharacteristic for Liam. Normally, he knows very well what he's doing, but getting caught in the opening like this, in such a decisive game, this will make him very angry. I mean, I think that Liam's standards are so high, yeah, that he just hates to be surprised in the opening. He's very strong in the openings, and this will be a big shock for him.
And as you mentioned, if Alireza wins this game, it's actually match over, and queen c1 has a very big threat of hitting the bishop and threatening knight g5. Looks like trouble for Liam. Peter, what is the... Oh my God, Magnus has made a lot of pawn moves to the third rank. This is kind of a really strange position. Peter, you can't be a fan of the way white is playing here.
You mean in the Magnus game?
Yes.
Well, I mean, okay, he's kind of provoking this bishop on h5. Yeah, he's trying to target that bishop with knight f4. I mean, I feel like it makes a lot of sense, but of course it will depend if the strategy works or not. Yeah, if the strategy works, we probably will be, you know, praising Magnus that wow, I mean, it was sensational, whatever. But if Hans managed to punish him again for some slightly offbeat kind of way of play, then we can't be praising Magnus.
Our chat is discussing all kinds of first moves after this 1-8-3 that we saw from Magnus. Peter, what do you think? Which are the first? What would be the top 3 moves with white that you'll never play on move 1?
Well, okay, I guess f3, it's one of those moves that is just, I mean, no, f3 never. And then, okay, a4, h3, h4, I mean, those are the moves that also don't come natural to me.
F3, A4, and H4. Well, F4 is quite normal. I think that's also, that's the bird's opening, no? They call it?
Yeah. I mean, F4 I used to play as a kid. I have to say that also 1-A3 I was playing quite a lot in Blitz. I mean, just trolling, because A3 is not a bad move at all. It just gives black the move, and then you will be like, I'm black with an extra tempo. So it has a quite and you know, there was also the shock that after E3, at some point, my opponent played the move E5, and I blitzed out C4, you know, and then if you play C4, E5, A3, it's just nothing, yeah? It's like, okay, what is it? But the psychological effect that you play A3 and after E5, you play C4, you already feel like, yes, I got a Sicilian with an A3 tempo, what do you want from me? I'm just gonna crush you. So there are all kinds of mind games like this.
Actually, black plays a6 in so many moments, so you're absolutely right and on point with that. We've seen that in Queen's Gambit decline so many times, and Magnus plays it himself with black just playing a6 and on move 3 or 4, and at some point it comes to use. So a3 is not useless. I kind of think chat is discussing a lot about 1g4. That's one move that I would not probably make.
Well, but it's also this children stuff, yeah, that after g4, d5, bishop g2, bishop takes g4, c4 is already almost winning for white, yeah? So we were also in the childhood, you know, we're bullshitting like this, yeah, that we can play g4, it's a winning move, yeah? And it was kind of, you know, it was, I remember I was like 8 years old, and back then we were heavily discussing this g4 and how to react to it.
That's actually a very cool trap, Peter. Can you just show it really quickly? Because I see a lot of chat is fan of 1g4.
Yes, of course. I mean, g4, and it's a winning move because the opponent wants to punish it with d5, bishop g2, take the pawn, like, okay, what has my opponent done? And then you go c4, and you almost win the game, because thanks to the pin, you will win the d5 pawn. And queen b3 is coming as well.
Also somewhere queen a4 checks and b7.
Yeah, I mean, c6, I think it was going queen b3 on the spot, or first cd5, and already we see double attack on b7 and on d5, and white is clearly better. So all kinds of things like this. If you are a child, yeah, or if you are someone new to the game, you are so excited, yeah, because you don't see this often, that such dynamics are possible.
Very fun. And I agree with James that knight h3 on move 1, I think that is just too much. I would not be able to play knight h3.
No, but it's my favorite. Knight h3 is my favorite. Yes, of course. I was trolling on the internet, you know, in like 2006, I was playing like 50 games with knight h3, and I was winning almost all of them, because people are underestimating knight h3 with the idea d5. Again, you think like you win, but then I have g3, protecting the knight. Psychological effect, you know, bishop g2, f3, knight f2, and later you're going to go e4 and you checkmate the opponent like a King's Indian. Yeah. All this, you know, I already now can't really imagine myself playing like this when I was young, of course. I mean, okay, all kinds of this trolling is fun, a lot of fun.
I think especially in online chess, these kind of plans, you know, first 5 moves, what to make, and suddenly you're up on the clock and your opponent has no idea. This could yield a lot of results in your favor.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But okay, we have so much to discuss, so we don't have time for this. I mean, look at this. Anish actually played the move a5. What I mentioned, that okay, if white does not have a threat, then why not just to play a5? White plays h3. Black finally goes rook e8, and this is how we got this rook endgame. Everything traded. Takes rook e1 check. King g2, rook d1. I mean, white is a pawn up, but it's very drawish.
This is a playoff match. And it almost, one gets the feeling that both players are happy to take it to playoff.
Well, I also feel like both players have somehow too much respect for each other. Yeah, it's like Pragg knows that Anish is incredibly strong, and Anish knows that Pragg is very dangerous and already a very big force to reckon with. Yeah, so it's kind of, but on the other hand, Anish will have the white pieces if this game ends. So I would not rule out yet that actually Anish is waiting for that chance with the white pieces to get something.
True, but you know, in the last round, it's always tricky because if with the white pieces you try to over push, there's no coming back as well. There are no second chances. So we've seen it very often that the last final round of the match is sometimes played a little more safer because you know that you won't have, there's very little buffer to mess up things.
Yeah, but this is actually exactly what Anish was talking about yesterday in the studio. I asked him that how he's explaining this, that we are seeing so little playoffs, yeah, because it would be so logical. And he was saying, yeah, that somehow we have the guys in the tournament who are very ambitious and they don't really care about safety. Yeah, and this also kind of explains that why we have so many decisive results and we are not getting so easily to this seemingly natural course of events when the match is tied with 2-2. All right, let's take a look what Alireza is doing. Actually, we are seeing exactly what we have been talking about. Bishop takes e4, knight g5, it all happened. Black sacrifices the pawn, but make sure that he won't be checkmated, the king is safe. And now the big question is, can he find enough counterplay? Rook e8, knight c3 played. And after the move c6, to be honest, the move d5 kind of shocks me. Did Alireza really play d5? Yes, he did. And now black plays c5. Isn't this counterplay? But knight e2, okay, maybe Alireza has calculated everything. He's trying to bring his knight.
But rook e4, I love that move to stop knight f4, also threatening to double up. So you have to play a move like knight g3, but then the knight is kind of really badly placed on g3 with the bishop on g6 controlling squares.
But on the other hand, if we're going to go h4, h5, it might serve a good purpose. Who knows?
True. So after knight g3, black looks like you have to trade because you can't really allow a doubling up on the file. Peter, we'll come back to this, but we're getting some updates that Magnus is in trouble for the second time. I mean, what is this opening he's played? I get it, a3, not so bad, but all that g3, f3, e3, it's playing in the spirit of Bongcloud with that king f2, king g2. This cannot be good for white. I know it's the era of modern chess, and I know I'm on a rant here, but things have gone wrong for white.
Well, I think that if you ask Magnus, he will say that, no, I'm perfectly happy. I mean, what's the problem? I mean, I'm making progress, yeah, that I eliminated the light square bishop, yeah, he managed to trade, but the question will be, what happens if black breaks in the center with e5 exactly, and Hans goes for it?
He's done it. And of course you break in the center with e5 when white has barely developed. You're playing as white. You haven't made a single developing move. You've advanced your pawns. You've overpushed. Yeah, the only person, if somebody can get away with stuff like this, it's only him. Somehow Magnus is just hard to beat him, but I just feel even for him, this is an overpush. And Hans should be very pleased with the position. Just look at it, Peter. All pieces out, control over the center. G5 hits the knight.
Yeah, and now he will take ED4. That's probably his idea. But white has knight A4. Hang on. ED4 is met by knight A4. Can you really take ED4? If not, then what? This is a key moment. This is a key moment because if you have to play knight H5, for example, and then I get the chance of taking on D5 and eventually play E4 against ED4, then it's a very interesting structure.
But
maybe long term you will. Sorry?
Let's say you start with knight h5, Peter, for example here.
Yeah. Yeah, probably you have to. Yeah.
And knight takes d5. And I hit your knight with queen a5.
Queen a5 or queen d8. You can choose.
Queen d8 is also very tempting, I agree. But okay, let's say queen a5. Queen d8 I really like, actually.
Yeah.
And even if you take on e5, it just looks like so much compensation.
But I mean, okay, I will not take. I wanted to get this. Yeah, bishop c4. No, actually, Hans goes ED4. He calculates. Yeah, the feeling was that ED4 should be the right move, and What does it mean? That he sacrifices the piece, knight a4, the queen has to move back, and then after gf, just b5, simply like this, tap the knight. Wow. Okay. This is great news, because we destroy white's construction. That's why this ed4 is so tempting. We have to destroy white's construction, and Magnus will be very angry because he loves good structures.
Okay, this is a really nice idea of actually trapping the knight on a4. So Peter, let's just slow this down a bit. So e takes d4. You have to move the knight, because if you take on d4, black simply goes knight h5, hits that f4 square. d4 is a weakness. Knight into d5 now runs into queen a5, where g5 will be weak as well, or queen d8. This looks like too much for white.
Exactly. The whole point of white was that after ed4, he wanted to play e4, protecting the knight, and getting this dynamic structure. So this is a cold shower for Magnus, and I think it's the first moment of the game when he's really angry. I mean, before I felt like he was following a plan. He was kind of provocative, but he was following a plan and playing also against Hans's clock. Hans, by the way, has only 3 minutes left. But if things work out and knight becomes very direct, then actually Hans, with his confidence and without, I mean, not being a hesitant player at all, if he gets his chance, he can just crush anyone.
Well, it's 3 minutes on the clock, and that's not much time. Hans, I think, feels the power of the position. Let's run a poll on our chat as well. Guys, do you think Hans can pull this off? Big moment once again with the black pieces. He has a dominating position, but still needs to play precise. And look at that clock situation. So the pressure is on Hans. Can Hans do this? Yes or no, chat? Tell us. E takes d4. The main line is what happens after knight a4, Peter. Let's have that on the board one more time. You simply fall back with the queen, either to c7 or to d8. And then after you take on f6, you want to go b5. He's gone for e takes d4 though.
Yeah, he went. I mean, it's a move that he's very, very disliking. I mean, Magnus is super angry, I believe, but oh no, queen takes d4 at least. I mean, I felt like we even don't want to take it because we already want something more, but probably because of the time situation, Hans wants to keep things simple. I was expecting queen d8, to be honest. Queen d8 was the most logical to me. But okay, he takes the pawn, he grabs the pawn back, and he wants to very quickly to bring one of his looks, I don't know, rook a8 or rook f8, targeting the knight, and he enjoys a nice advantage.
No, it still looks like a very pleasant endgame, but definitely the middle game, keeping the queens on the board, would have been a lot more dangerous for Magnus. Peter, we've got just maybe a few more minutes that we can look at other games before jumping to this one. So let's do a quick roundup of what is happening. The Anish Prague board, I think we can say this will end in a draw.
Yeah, it's very, very drawish. I mean, okay, here this pawn doesn't really make any difference. White's pawn structure is damaged. That's the problem. So white is not able to get the usual maneuver of bringing his king towards the queen side. So it should be a draw. Alireza against Liam. It's kind of a very double-edged but very concrete position. I see that the evaluation bar gives white a clear advantage. White is a pawn up. Black has some dangerous counterplay, but if computer says that white is clearly better, it means that the dynamics don't work out move pair move for black. And
I mean, it's just that bishop on f6 just feels like such a monster in this position, and it's going to be tough to fight against that.
Yeah, and also the knight on f4 very nicely covers the d3 square. Otherwise, actually, bishop d3 would almost be checkmate. So it's very nice for white that this knight on f4 and the bishop on f6 kind of dominate white's position, but still the position looks for a human eye as very complicated and messy. And what about Levon?
All three results are possible in this one.
Yeah, and also here it's very tricky because black has already played the move a5. So a5, c5 pawn structure, there's a hole on b5, there's a hole on d5. And if there would be queens on the board, then maybe one could argue that black has good counter chances against white's king, but it's an endgame. And maybe slowly, Levon is also preparing king g5, eventually bishop takes d5, and then king f4, king g3 counterplay.
Wow. Peter, you call this an endgame? To me, it just looks like a complicated, well, semi-middle game position, because no pawns have been traded. Just two, the minor pieces are still on the board. It looks like a close position, and once again, everything to play for here as well.
Yeah. I mean, the move King H6, look at this. Levon again with 30 minutes on the clock, just chills. Like, this is all kind of, you know what, it's a strategical battle. Yeah, White is planning to play B4. Levon immediately opted for Rook A8, making sure that he eyes the A4 pawn, so it won't be so easy for White to push B4. Duda comes back with the knight to E3. He might want to shuffle Bishop D5 and eventually Knight C4. He wants to regroup and somehow get this good knight versus the bad bishop, but Levon immediately goes Bishop G5. Will we see a repetition? Bishop D8 blitzed out.
Well, at this very moment, you mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, Knight E3, Bishop G5 played. Levon shows that actually I have nothing against a draw. And maybe...
He's repeating it. He's gone for it again. And that's it. Well, that's actually good news for Lev playing with the black pieces. He goes into the final round with the white pieces. And but I think in this position, having the two bishops, probably Jan Krzysztof Duda just felt there's not much to play for. Peter, let's jump back to the Magnus game and take it from where we left. Hans is down to a minute and a half.
Yeah, I feel like he lost the momentum by going queen takes d4. It was a very understandable practical decision, yeah, that you don't want to calculate, but maybe he could have asked for more by keeping the queens. And now let's take a look. How did Magnus somehow get away? Yeah, Rook B1, Rook D8, Bishop D3. And we see that actually this knight on H5 is a very double-edged piece, because if the knight on D5 dominates the knight and black knight won't be able to jump to the critical F4 square, then actually in long terms, White even might get the upper hand. Yeah, so that's why Hans is going knight E6 to try to fight for this F4 square. Bishop E4 played, King F8 sidesteps something, but hang on, I mean, White is slowly stabilizing.
One gets the feeling, no, that White is actually coordinating his pieces very well suddenly, and the worst is really behind. And it all comes down to that moment of queen trade. Queen takes d4 when the queen could have just moved away. You sacrifice a pawn, but look at that king position. It would have kept the initiative going. And Hans is a player of initiative. So a slightly strange decision there. After king f8, you still have this bishop on c1. Do you just go bishop e3 here, or what is it that you play to continue your development?
Yeah, bishop e3 would be very natural. On the other hand, for some reason, Magnus feels the need to take some time. He was blitzing out his moves. He might feel like now he's perfectly safe. Opponent has only 1.5 minutes on the clock. So yeah, he might be tempted to try to fight for something.
D2. So he's put the bishop on d2. That's actually a really nice square because it threatens bishop a5, really destabilizing that rook on d8. Rook d7 would run into knight b6. And if you have to lose control of over the d file, that could actually be trouble for black.
Well, I think the question really comes down to the fact that probably black should jump onto f4 and sacrifice the pawn if he can. And this case, opposite colored bishop position, for example, after knight hf4.
You have to probably take on f4, yeah?
Yeah, and after knight f4, okay, for example, I just want to highlight here, knight takes f4. Maybe you don't take though. Maybe you just move the king to f1. And rely on this very powerful bishop on e4. Yeah, knight f4 check had been played. Knight takes f4, knight takes f4, and now king f1. I'm worried now.
King f1, you're still hitting on b7, and
that's it.
Bishop a5 is a big threat as well.
Wow, I mean, no, this is, yeah, if actually Hans wanted to go knight f4, he should have done with bishop on c1 and king on g8. It would have worked for him much better, because then White was still undeveloped. But now with bishop a5 coming and bishop takes b7, and you are down to 30 seconds. Oh my God, actually Hans gonna lose this game.
This is such a big shift in momentum. b6 played, defending that pawn, also guarding against the a5 threat. If you go bishop b7, it probably gives White, bishop b7 is possible because rook c2, bishop f4 hangs.
Yeah, and Magnus just collects the pawn, meaning that actually after b5 he has bishop takes b5, yeah, and after rook b5 bishop f4.
Always bishop f4. This is unreal, Peter. Magnus plays this 1a3, makes all these moves, f3 e3 g3 king g2, and then somehow survives.
Yeah, well, he should have been punished. Yeah, it was very close. Just somehow if Hans would have managed to take a deep breath and say, like, no matter I have only 2.5 minutes, but I will punish Magnus. Let me keep the queens, and I don't care that I'm pawn done. It would have worked. Because we have seen that Hans, when he gets the initiative, is so incredibly strong and very quick. There was just no reason to get into some technical position against Magnus.
Absolutely. That queen d4 just feels like the turning point in this game. And now it looks like it's all Magnus's game. Having the double bishop advantage, having that extra pawn, black's rook on b8, not ideally placed. This looks like it's going to be about a bit of technique, and not just that. Hans is down to 40 seconds on the clock.
Yeah, it's.
And meanwhile, Peter, let's quickly go over to the Alireza Liam board, which is such an important game. We could stay onto this one, but I think this is where the action really matters, because if Alireza wins this, then the match is over. But now I'm looking at the position and I'm just wondering if black is fine.
Yeah,
already.
black is creating, for example, there is a move, bishop d7. I mean, look at this. If the bishop gets to that diagonal and rook takes c4 runs into bishop b5 pin, I mean, then suddenly white's king on f1 will get into a lot of trouble.
I love bishop d7, this rerouting of the bishop to this b5 diagonal. You can't come to d3 because of the knight on f4. You shift it to b5. And actually, how is white fighting this bishop d7, bishop b5 idea?
Exactly. I mean, white will suddenly have to switch also to defense. Yeah, I really feel like, and everything that happened here in the last couple of moves indicate
maybe
like...
Peter, sorry, maybe in that position, you can go knight e2, bishop d4.
Wow, but oh no, I mean, the move bishop d6, it's again some panicky move with little time on the clock. Bishop d6 doesn't work. I mean, takes, this will end badly.
And bishop d3, wow, and I see a rival bar. It seems to say that bishop d3 is an awful move.
Yeah, well, I mean, it feels awful. I mean, but clearly Liam is thinking about counterplay with rook e2. But hang on, can we play like a computer? We go rook e1, and after d2, we play rook d1. Wow, I mean, this looks very strong because I stop any kind of rook e2, yeah, and you don't have any dynamic, and the pawn on d2 will be vulnerable. Yeah, rook e1 on the board, yeah.
On the board. So you just pick up the d2 pawn, actually.
Yeah, you just win the game, actually. I mean,
wow. You know, also, Peter, really quickly, I'm just wondering that idea of bishop d7, if white had the counter to go knight e2, bd4, because otherwise it just looked like it would be lost for white, that position. If we can
yeah, but also knight e2, bishop d4, I will hit you with rook takes e2, and I might be winning.
Ah, yes. So bishop d4, you've got rook e2.
Yeah, I mean, okay, if my bishop reaches, I promise that it will end badly, yeah? So I will just hit something.
And then after bishop b2, you just win. Bishop b6, you win the house. And after king e2, what do you do? Bishop
then I
d4,
take on d4.
Yeah. So maybe, maybe you have
wow,
to go
I mean, okay, it's very uncharacteristic for Liam because he usually spots all these kind of tricks. He's so super confident. I feel like he's not yet settled into the tournament. I mean, he did not play the Olympiad. Yeah, he's maybe a bit rusty. I really feel that he's a little bit rusty because an informed Liam would just spot all these things very quickly.
Very strange, yeah. And the thing is that it just walks into a line where white is now the one who's pushing for the win. And once again, Alireza wraps up the match if he wins this.
Yeah, and now he's gonna win. I mean, I just don't see. I mean, maybe you should not push d2, and the reason why Liam is thinking that maybe rook takes e3, bishop e3, despite it should be lost, maybe it gives more practical chances because really after d2, rook d1. I mean, black will have to, d2 on the board. Black will have to play rook d3, but I mean, okay, bishop g5 or king e2 and then take on d2. I just don't, okay, he goes b3, but it does nothing. I mean, b3 does nothing. White can even play a3. But then bishop a5, okay. Good spot there by Liam. He's fighting. At least he's fighting.
So after a takes b3, you just go bishop a5.
Yeah, in any case, he actually wants to get bishop a5, and then suddenly he threatens to win the game with rook e1 check.
So you'll have to go bishop c3, and then that should be holdable for sure.
That might be holdable. I mean, I don't know, because let's not forget, we have 3 versus 1 on the king side.
Yeah.
It's something we are not used to, yeah, that usually, it's liquidation, but yeah, actually, white has all these extras. So just maybe a takes b3, bishop a5, bishop c3. I mean, black has some chances to survive, but it looks bad. Yeah, takes rook d2, rook b3, and rook a2. It should be technical win.
Yeah, this looks like it's going to be a tough task for Liam to survive this. And do we have an update on the Magnus board?
Well, they are now a little bit stagnating. So what happened here? Yeah, Magnus played bishop c4, knight d4, king g2, yeah, protecting, bishop a6 back, rook c7, bishop c3, knight e6 back. Hans is down to 25 seconds. Very tough.
But now that the rook from b8 has actually come over to the c file on the open file, it still feels like Hans has made some progress in the position.
Yeah, he did make. The big question is it enough to create real counterplay? Because he's down to 25 seconds. So only if he really gets some counterplay, he has chances to survive. I mean, at least the knight is eyeing the weak spot on f4, yeah, and also the weakness on g5. So we see some hope at least for Hans, but I mean, usually Magnus is merciless.
It's still a pawn down with double bishop. Well, knight f4 does seem like a nice juicy square for the knight.
Wow, and Magnus says, you know, I'm not impressed. I just play for wow. What's this move? King e7. Now Hans wants rook h8, counterplay against the h2 pawn. Nice spot. Nice spot. King e7, protecting the bishop, freeing the rook. We might get a game. We might still get a game, but maybe it's not enough. I mean, just h4 and rook h8, rook h1 calms things down. Yeah. Yeah, so rook h8 maybe even can be simply answered by rook h1.
Wow.
I mean, and then opening up the way for the other rook. Yeah, Hans goes knight f4 check. I don't believe in this because knight g7 pawn is also hanging.
And you just sidestep. But where do you move with your king? Do you go to f2?
I mean, I can go to f1, maybe f2, and then if you do give me some check, then I go to f1.
Or king f1 to start with. But you could also start with king f1.
But king f1, then I have to calculate rook h8 and bishop g7, rook takes h4. But maybe you are in some mating net also with your king.
He starts with king f2. So after bishop c5, he wants to go king f1.
Well, or then even king g3.
King g3, then you can not come back bishop d6 because, yeah, knight e6, he falls back.
Yeah, this has gone horribly wrong because giving up a tempo was definitely not part of the plan. Yeah, Magnus goes bishop b5, eyeing that this king is in some kind of a mating net. Yeah, now rook h8 is just too late. I mean, it had to be tried one move earlier. I mean, two moves earlier instead of knight f4 check.
And rook d6 is still not working. Yeah, rook d6, you've got king d6 and the king is fine. So he makes a simple move, rook h1. And after this check, he's going to go to... It's kind of hard to come up with a square. Does he go king g2 now?
He can go king g2 or king g3 first. And then, I mean, he can do the triangle.
Or is he going to put his king to g4?
Well, that's a tricky spot because then black gets these f5 checks.
Yeah, one check and it would be mate. Maybe you'll go rook c8, rook c4.
Yeah, and okay, king g2, yeah, keeping things under control. All Magnus needs is one move, rook b1 to e1, pinning the knight and creating the terrible set of bishop take g7, yeah? So it's, and the Hans down to 15 seconds, basically.
12 seconds for Hans, there's just no time at all.
Yeah, I can't see him surviving this. Yeah, knight f4 check.
There's a check, and now you go back king f2. There's a little bit of a king dance here that Magnus is doing.
Yeah, Magnus is enjoying himself that he always, now he's going to go king g3, wins another tempo. I mean, it's very frustrating.
Bishop d6, what is he? Then he gives a check on e1, yeah?
Yeah, it's just very frustrating. Anyway. I mean, that, yeah, you see, Magnus has done all the extra moves while black was just going back and forth, going back and forth.
Oh my God, Peter, big update that Pragg is winning against Anish. Is that for real?
Well, it could be because actually Pragg was making very nice progress with this f4 pawn sacrifice, but I feel like Magnus is about to win this game, so maybe let's just stick to it. In any case, there is still a lot to play in the Pragg-Anish game. It's just the beginning, and who knows if Pragg will also find all those computer moves.
All right, we're going to stick to this one. I'll keep an eye out on this. When something big happens, we'll switch to this.
Yeah,
also
rook e4, yeah, provoking f5, so White's bishop is again alive. I mean, this is... And now the knight on e6 is vulnerable as well, yeah, the pawn was lured to f5.
And also, Peter, I have to inform you that it looks like Alireza will be wrapping up his match, by the way. So maybe we should just go to that. We know that Magnus is winning here. And I want to draw your attention to Alireza's match because that's a really big moment there.
Yeah, this is a big moment. I mean, exactly everything happened as we discussed. White has 3 pawns on the king side. They just keep on rolling. And the d pawn, somehow it should be already on d3 to really hope for counterplay. Yeah, the pawn is still way too far away from action.
Oh, this has been a very tough start for Liam, no? From day one against Lev, and now this one against Alireza, and it looks like it might be just match over with this game. I don't see Liam being able to hold this position.
Yes, and the point is that, I mean, what really impressed me with Liam throughout the tour, he had incredible results, that he was so precise. I mean, he was never really making a mistake. Yeah, he never made an unforced error. Yeah, he just always played very quickly. And so far, that's why I was mentioning that I feel like he's a little bit rusty yet, because he wasn't exactly true himself. He was making mistakes. He was allowing her opponent to use his mistake, and this is absolutely not characteristic for him.
Peter, what's the technique here? What's the plan for White? You've pushed your pawns to these squares, and with Rook H1, Liam makes sure that it's not easy. Well, he goes King G2, so you can't really maintain your Rook. Wow, Rook H4.
Yeah, it's desperation. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, there is also the problem. White can give a Rook F5 check, and then where do you go? If you go King G7, I'm gonna win with Rook D5. If you go King E6, then why did you start running towards F6? Yeah, there are all kinds of things. Of course, finally, also it can come down that eventually, if White calculates very precise, okay, so he wants systematic approach. He wants Rook H2, Rook behind the pawn, and then push, which will force Black to play King G7 now.
And then you have your move Rook D2.
Yeah, then he wants, but then maybe F5 comes. Yeah, that would be maybe some kind of a resource. For example, just to highlight this, that it seems like we are losing a second pawn, but with F5, we might escape.
That's actually a really nice trick.
Yeah, that's what Liam is trying to set up. And no, but with D5, he opens up everything now. After D5, now just check, and then the rook goes to D6. And if you play Rook D1, then King H4, King G5. So King G7, Rook D6, F5 will be played anyway. But this one looks just lost.
Down to a minute and a half and a minute for Alireza, which should be enough to show the technique. So King E7, the problem is now the H pawn advances.
Well, I mean, somehow that now the 6th rank was opened. I mean, it really feels like it heavily benefits White. Of course, it's still.
Do you go H6 here?
Not sure, because H6, D4, one thing I feel like I don't want to do with White, calculating some forced move pair move variations if I could control. But F5 is a threat.
F5 is a threat, and I'm just wondering, after H6, D4, for example, there might be these ideas of just trying to get the king closer to the D pawn.
Yeah, there are all kinds of, besides even F5, G5, and then Rook H5, Rook F6 might still be lost. So yeah, White goes H6, pushes the pawn. So yeah, Black goes D4, of course. Yeah, Black is relying on the counterplay with the D4 pawn.
Just get your king, no? King F3?
Just like this, yeah? I mean, the good news for White after H6, he does not need to care about F5 because now he can just push G5, yeah, King F3, and how to react. Rook E1 has to be played, yeah? Basically, Rook E1 has to be played. You can't allow the king to get to E4. But I mean, okay, then already the pawns are moving forward.
All
no,
right,
it's hopeless.
This one is hopeless and looks completely busted for Black. I'm going to leave it for you to decide. Do you want to go over to the Magnus game? Because it's still on. It looks like a complete nightmare for Hans.
Yeah, I mean, the situation did not improve for Hans. I mean, one could argue that he's still in the game. That's already an improvement because it looked like it's going to be finished. So he's fighting. He's putting incredible resistance. But how do you stop this A pawn? With this combined with this bishop, yeah, Rook B8, trying to give a check. White can always just play Rook D2 if he's worried of anything, but Magnus is not worried. Yeah,
just go A6, because after Rook B2, you can probably just get your king to G3.
I mean, no, you can also go king e3 and after rook b3 check, you go rook b3. Yeah.
Very nice, very clean.
Yeah. So Magnus is not the type of player who sees any ghost. Yeah, just goes for it, and basically I think it's now over.
And also with this threat of bishop g2, check, a7 will be just game over. So he's gone king c5 to sidestep that check and to get out of that pin. Rook c1 played.
Yeah, very unpleasant. Yeah, rook c1 just seals the victory, because if you go king b6, then okay, rook b1 check is coming.
He just goes for the endgame, and trades off the rooks and gets the king.
and then also the g6 pawn can't be protected actually.
Bishop c4, bishop f7.
Yeah. Later on, this idea also comes. Yeah, so Hans goes back king d6, but this case he never threatens rook b2 check because of king e3.
So he could he just start with bishop g2? Bishop g2 might run into rook b2.
Yeah, king e3.
Starts with king e3. Very
Yeah,
nice. Just hits the knight first.
First hit the knight, exactly. And we are also seeing that Alireza is about to win his game, I believe. So then he would just wrap up the match. Anish, by the way, holds the game.
Wow, so much.
Wow, but
action.
hang on. There is the breaking development that maybe Liam has a chance to make a draw. Because rook h2 he protects, and after king e3, black goes king f5. And after rook takes d2, he gives rook h3 check, and then black starts collecting the pawn. So, wow, what an incredible tenacious defense by Liam.
But can't you just start with f5 and push? Where do you go after f5? I mean, if
Yeah, well, I have to go to e7, I guess. Yeah, king e7. No, king e7 loses. Wow.
And how does this lose? 1 second. So f5, king e7. Do you just go king e3 now?
Well, now the king is pushed back, yeah? It's
And you
apparently...
just go and pick up the d2 pawn. Just king e3 looks completely winning, no?
Well, okay, black will play rook g2.
But rook g2, there might be
Then okay, h7 and g, yeah, okay, f6, g6 is already a panicky move. f6, g6, and yeah, rook takes h6, rook d2. I mean, it's not 2 versus 1. Yeah, usually 2 versus 1 is a draw, but here with the very bad pawn on f6, yeah, it will be an eternal target. He won't be able to hold it. Wow, I mean, yeah, Tadeusz was mentioning that just one move earlier, if Liam plays finds rook h2, then it's a draw. Like this, it was backfiring after all. Yeah,
and
rook
this
h5.
one, now you just get your rook to a2 and then to a7.
Yeah, I mean, okay, finally, when you activate the rook, any check, and then rook to f7, it should win.
Wait, what? Something? Okay, king f3 still.
No,
under
it's
control?
this is just a computer mistake. Yeah, that he needs some time to understand that every move is winning.
All right, and Magnus still on the path to conversion, but it looks like he's doing fine. Rook e3, a trade has been offered.
Yeah, I mean, okay, Magnus has collected the second pawn, and his h pawn is
H5, H6.
going
This
to
is
queen.
just unstoppable.
That's it.
Wow, that was quite a rough game. I mean, Magnus starting with this 1f3, going into this crazy opening, and then Hans had the initiative, did everything right to punish Magnus for the kind of opening play that he showed. And then suddenly, one mistake, momentum changes, and Magnus slowly just took over. And that's it.
And won the game and takes the lead in the match. And now suddenly Hans needs to bounce back in the last